Chapter 2843. Servant He was very confident in the speed of the space-time roulette. The space-time roulette was the most powerful flying artifact of the space-time beast race. The space-time beast race was one of the top 10 races in the Eldritch domain. They had a strong foundation and were skilled in the power of space-time. The space-time roulette they created was very fast. As Zhuowen's cultivation continued to improve, he became more familiar with the space-time law of the space-time roulette. The space-time roulette in his hands was naturally much faster than before. Wuxia was not good at speed. Moreover, he was severely injured and had less than 10% of his strength left. Even if he burned his blood essence, his speed was far from comparable to the space-time roulette. Zhuowen, let me live. I've been presumptuous. Today's matter is between you and me. Let's pretend nothing happened. Wuxia's scalp went numb. He hurriedly shouted at Zhuowen. Zhuowen sneered and said, "Now you're meat on the chopping block, and I'm the knife. You're definitely going to die. Don't you think it's a joke to say that to me?" With that, Zhuowen took out a divine arrow from the great world and knocked it on the bowstring. He gently pulled the bowstring. Suddenly, a terrifying killing intent swept out like a storm. Wuxia's expression changed drastically. He did not expect Zhuowen to be able to shoot such a terrifying arrow again. He was now an arrow at the end of its flight. If he was hit by this arrow again, he would definitely die. Thinking of this, Wuxia hurriedly begged for mercy. "Immortal Master Zhuo, I beg you to let me live. As long as you let me live, I'll agree to anything." "Oh, if I let you live, you'll agree to anything?" Zhuowen asked softly. Wuxia felt that something was wrong, but it was a moment of life and death. He could only bite the bullet and agree. "In that case, hand over your spirit imprint and submit to me," Zhuowen said in an indifferent voice. Zhuowen originally planned to kill Wuxia, but he quickly remembered that Wuxia was an elder of the Ten Extremities Corpse sect. He probably had a high position in the Ten Extremities Corpse sect. If he didn't know that the Ten Extremities Corpse sect's underworld was interfered with by someone, he might not hesitate to shoot the arrow. But he knew that there was someone in the Ten Extremities Corpse sect. He planned to spare Wuxia. Was Zhuowen Xiai? Wuxia? How was it? World, realm, elusive underworld, soul flower. Was underworld, elusive world. Underworld, soul flower. Xiaxiaju Studio was. Moreover, he also wanted to know what use the realm-eluding underworld soul flower was in the hands of the sect leader of the Ten Extremities Corpse sect. He actually valued the realm-eluding underworld soul flower so much that he was willing to resort to such means. Wuxia's face darkened when he heard Zhuowen's words. He immediately refused. He was a late-stage god of creation and an elder of the Ten Extremities Corpse sect. He had always been the one to control the lives of others. How could he be willing to become someone else's slave? You don't agree? Zhuowen's gaze was gloomy as he drew the bowstring back a little more. Instantly, the killing intent directed at Wuxia became even more terrifying and terrifying. Wuxia's heart tightened. The shadow of death enveloped his body. He had no doubt that if Zhuowen shot the arrow, he would die without a doubt. "Wait, stop. I agree." Seeing the killing intent growing more and more terrifying, Wuxia completely let go of her dignity and lowered her head to Zhuowen. He knew very well that if he still didn't agree, he would really die. Between his life and his dignity, Wuxia chose the former without any hesitation. Zhuowen did not put down the Hou-Yi divine bow because of this. He said coldly, "Then hand over your soul imprint first." Wuxia stopped. His eyes flashed, and he revealed an extremely unwilling expression. However, when he sensed the increasingly terrifying killing intent in Zhuo, Wen's eyes. He let out a soft sigh. His right hand formed a sword and pointed at his forehead, and he threw the soul imprint to Zhuo-wen. Zhuo-wen caught the spiritual mark and inspected it. After confirming that it hadn't exploded, he nodded and put away the Ho-I divine bow and divine arrow. The terrifying killing intent instantly disappeared. Yin Wuxia, who had been on tenterhooks, also heaved a sigh of relief. Yin Wuxia's expression was complicated as she looked at the white-clothed youth with his hands behind his back. He didn't expect that he would become this person's slave in the end. If others knew that he, an elder of the Ten Extremes Yin Corpse sect and a late-stage Genesis lord, had become the slave of a master of destiny, they would probably laugh at him. However, Yin Wuxia had no choice. Yin Wuxia sighed softly. He already regretted chasing after Zhuo-wen. Originally, he didn't have much conflict with Zhuo-wen. After Zhuo-wen became a celestial master of the Pill-Array Immortal Alliance, he didn't want to provoke Zhuo-wen. Even if the naughty Shiva sent him a message, he still didn't plan to do so. However, after Lei Zixuan and Huang Wu gave him an idea, he agreed to it. Now, he had ended up like this. As he thought of this, Yin Wuxia looked at Lei Zixuan, who was trembling in the corner of the space-time roulette. "Greetings, Master." Yin Wuxia had no choice but to call Zhuo-wen Master unwillingly. Zhuo-wen nodded. He didn't care about Yin Wuxia's attitude. Instead, he said indifferently, "Yin Wuxia, do you know about the underworld hell of the Ten Extremes Yin Corpse sect?" Yin Wuxia was surprised. Naturally, he nodded repeatedly to show that he knew. "You should also know about the realm-eluding underworld soul flower, right?" Yin Wuxia was surprised. This was common knowledge in the host region. Although he didn't know why Zhuo-wen would ask such an obvious question, he could only nod respectfully. He didn't dare to be negligent in the slightest. "I heard that once foreign cultivators pluck the Realm Vanish Undersoul flower, they will be killed by the experts of your Ten Extremities Yin Corpse sect and snatch away the Realm Vanish Undersoul flower?" Zhuo-wen asked casually. Yin Wuxia's pupils shrank. He fell silent, but his heart was not calm. The realm-eluding underworld soul flower was considered a taboo in the Ten Extremes Yin Corpse sect. Zhuo-wen's question was actually considered a secret of the Ten Extremes Yin Corpse sect. It was information that couldn't be leaked. After all, Zhuo-wen was an outsider. Yin Wuxia didn't know how Zhuo-wen knew about this. "Speak." Zhuo-wen said indifferently. Yin Wuxia's heart trembled, and she hurriedly said, "Master, there is indeed such a thing. However, this is a huge secret of the Ten Extremes Yin Corpse sect. For Master to know such a thing, you are indeed omnipotent." Zhuo-wen didn't care about Yin Wuxia's flattery. Instead, he continued, "If I enter the underworld hell and obtain the realm-eluding underworld soul flower, how do I avoid the eyes of the Ten Extremes Yin Corpse sect and smoothly take it away?" Yin Wuxia smiled bitterly and said, "Master, the realm-eluding underworld soul flower is too important to the sect leader. Once the realm-eluding underworld soul flower appears, the sect leader will definitely know immediately. Then he will send experts to pluck it." Chapter 2844. Thunder God's Tereshwa when narrowed his eyes and said in a low voice, "Tell me how to avoid the spies your Ten Extremes Yin Corpse sect placed at the location where the elusive realm underworld soul flower will appear, and then smoothly bring out the elusive realm underworld soul flower. Don't talk about useless things." Yin Wuxia said helplessly, "Master, there's something you don't know. The Ten Extremes Yin Corpse sect has set up many spies in the Umbra Hell. Any realm elusive underworld soul flower, or any treasure more valuable than the realm elusive underworld soul flower, would probably be recorded by these spies immediately. Then the corresponding countermeasures would be taken. It's very difficult for you to avoid these spies and obtain the elusive underworld flower." Zhuowen calmly looked at Yin Wuxia until the latter's scalp went numb from being stared at. Yin Wuxia sighed dejectedly and said, "This lowly one has an idea, but I'll have to trouble my lord." "Tell me," Zhuowen said indifferently. "It's like this. The elusive underworld flower is very important to the sect leader of the 10 Extremities Yin Corps sect. As for the specific reason, I'm not too sure. Usually, if a foreign cultivator obtains the elusive underworld flower, it won't end well. However, if a disciple of our sect obtains it and hands it over to the sect leader, he will be handsomely rewarded." Yin Wuxia smiled ingratiatingly. Zhuowen narrowed his eyes and said, "You mean you want me to join your 10 Extremities Yin Corps sect and become a part of it?" Yin Wuxia hurriedly said, "Master, please don't misunderstand. This is indeed the best method this little one can think of. Furthermore, this little one's life and death is completely in the hands of Master. This little one doesn't dare to play any tricks." Zhuowen nodded. Yin Wuxia's soul imprint was completely under his control. If he wanted to kill Yin Wuxia, he only needed a thought. "Help me arrange my disciple's identity. It's best if you can arrange for me to be in a position related to the Umbra Hell," Zhuowen said indifferently. Yin Wuxia hurriedly nodded and bowed, agreeing repeatedly. "Now, follow me to Thunder God Garden," Zhuowen said, and left with Yin Wuxia. Lei Zixuan, who was lying in the corner of the space-time roulette, turned pale when she heard what Zhuowen said. "Immortal Master Zhua, it's all my fault. It has nothing to do with Thunder God Court. Please spare Thunder God Court this once," Lei Zixuan hurriedly said. Zhuowen's eyes were cold as he said expressionlessly, "Nothing? That's the funniest joke I've ever heard. Back then, your Lightning God Garden's Lei Litian teamed up with Huang Wu and chased me until I was in an extremely sorry state. If it wasn't for the fact that I have some powerful trump cards, I'm afraid I would be dead by now." Lei Zixuan revealed a hopeful expression and quickly asked, "Immortal Master Zhua, do you know where my master is now? You must know about it, right?" Zhuowen said indifferently, "He's dead, and I was the one who killed him." When he said this, not only Lei Zixuan, but even Yin Wuxia couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. However, Yin Wuxia now thought about it and felt that it was reasonable. Although Lei Litian was slightly weaker than him, he was only a mid-stage god of creation, and the divine arrow that Zhua, when shot out, was truly terrifying to the extreme. Even he couldn't block it, let alone Lei Litian. At the same time, Yin Wuxia cursed in his heart. If he had known that Lei Litian was killed by Zhuowen, he would rather die than assassinate Zhuowen. Now, he had ended up like this and had become Zhuowen's slave. His life was not even guaranteed. Thinking of this, Yin Wuxia coldly glared at Lei Zixuan. Clearly, he put most of the blame on Lei Zixuan. Lei Zixuan was dazed. When Lei Litian's life mark disappeared, she already knew that Lei Litian might have died. However, she trusted Lei Litian too much. She felt that Lei Litian shouldn't have died, so she didn't believe it. Now that Zhuowen had personally admitted it, the last trace of hope in Lei Zixuan's heart was also destroyed. She was very clear that after losing Lei Litian, the Thunder God Park was already a Dao Palace level force that only looked impressive. "You're going to destroy the Thunder God Park, right?" Lei Zixuan was dazed as she looked at Zhuowen and said self-mockingly, "No, I'm going to reorganize the Thunder God Park. Also, I'm going to reorganize the Huangji family. I'm going to combine these two Dao palaces together," Zhuowen said indifferently. Lei Zixuan and Yin Wuxia were both shocked. They didn't expect Zhuowen to be so bold as to forcefully reorganize two Dao palaces. Although the highest leaders of the Thunder God Park and the Huangji family were killed, Lei Litian and Huang Wu's prestige still existed. If Zhuowen went to reorganize them alone, it would be impossible for the cultivators of the Thunder God Park and the Huangji family to accept him. Master, regardless of whether it is the Thunder God Garden or the Huangji clan, they are both Dao Palace-level factions that have developed for countless years. Their foundations are deeply rooted. Even if their leaders have been killed by you, it is basically impossible for you to rely on this to subdue them. Moreover, these two Dao palaces have many Dao palaces under their control. When the time comes, it'll be very easy for a huge upheaval to occur. It'll be very difficult for you to suppress it alone. Yin Wuxie was deeply worried as he raised his worries. Zhuowen waved his hand, indicating that Yin Wuxie didn't need to worry. He would deal with this matter. Soon, Zhuowen's group arrived at the Thunder God Park. Zhuowen also sent a message to Tong Chime, asking them to return to the Thunder God Park. In the past few days, Lei Zixuan's soul imprint had been forcefully subdued by Zhuowen. Her life and death were in the hands of Zhuowen. Therefore, she obeyed Zhuowen's every word. He didn't directly kill Lei Zixuan. Instead, he asked her to stay. After all, Lei Zixuan was the great senior sister of the Thunder God Park. If she was around, it would be much more convenient to reorganize the Thunder God Park. Great senior sister. When Zhuowen's group of 3 entered the Thunder God Park, many cultivators cupped their hands and bowed to Lei Zixuan. It could be seen that Lei Zixuan had quite a bit of prestige in the Thunder God Park. However, there were also many cultivators who looked at Zhuowen and Yin Wuxie in front of Lei Zixuan with astonishment. This was because from Lei Zixuan's position, it could be seen that Lei Zixuan seemed to be very afraid of this person and faintly felt inferior to him. However, they didn't have too many suspicions. They only thought that Lei Zixuan had brought an important guest with an extraordinary status. When Lei Zixuan brought Zhuowen to the highest point of the Thunder God Park, the Thunder God heavenly platform, many cultivators in the Thunder God Park became restless. They felt that something was wrong. The Thunder God heavenly platform was the most sacred place in the Thunder God Park. Below the platform was an incomparably huge plaza. Usually, only the Thunder God Park's master, Lei Li, had the qualifications to ascend the Thunder God heavenly platform. Moreover, once one ascended the platform, it basically meant that something major had happened. But now, Lei Zixuan actually brought 2 unfamiliar cultivators up the Thunder God heavenly platform. Was she crazy? Many cultivators of the Thunder God Park gathered around the plaza. Among them, there was no lack of experts of the Thunder God Park. They all looked at Zhuowen's group of 3 with unfriendly gazes. Great senior sister, what is the meaning of this? Only the Thunder God Park's master has the qualifications to ascend the Thunder God heavenly platform. Why are you going up there? Moreover, you brought 2 unfamiliar cultivators. Chapter 28:45. Lei Fu said, the young cultivators' words were like a fuse that ignited a bomb. The surrounding crowd immediately went into an uproar, and discussions filled the entire plaza like a wave. Everyone was puzzled as to why Lei Zixuan would do such a thing. On the Thunder God rooftop, Lei Zixuan smiled bitterly as she looked at Zhuowen in awe. She hesitated for a moment, then stood on the rooftop and said, Everyone, the reason why I'm here is because I have 2 extremely important things to announce. The moment Lei Zixuan said this, the plaza immediately quieted down. Although Lei Zixuan's cultivation wasn't high in the Thunder God Garden, her status wasn't low, especially among the younger generation of cultivators. Moreover, she was young, but her talent was very high. She was highly valued by Lei Litian, and even some of the higher-ups of the older generation would give Lei Zixuan some face. Now, that Lei Zixuan was going to announce something important Although it was still inappropriate to stand on the Thunder God rooftop, no one continued to make a ruckus. They wanted to hear what the important thing was. Our pavilion master has fallen. Lei Zixuan let out a long sigh and announced Lei Liqian's death. The plaza fell into silence at first, but soon after, it was filled with an uproar that could topple mountains and overturn seas. The pavilion master has fallen? How is that possible? In the host region, other than the 5 Dao palaces and the mysterious blood prison, which other force could have an expert who could kill our pavilion master? But soon, the noisy plaza suddenly quieted down, and an old man slowly walked out from the crowd. This old man had a hunched back and walked over step by step like a candle in the wind. From the outside, this was an old man who was about to enter his coffin. However, the appearance of this old man caused the plaza that was about to go out of control to completely quiet down. Elder Lei, you actually came out of seclusion? Lei Zixuan looked at the old man who walked out from the crowd. Her beautiful eyes revealed a trace of surprise, but it quickly dimmed. Zhuowen's eyes revealed a look of surprise. Although this old man looked haggard and decayed, his unremarkable body faintly emitted a heart-palpitating fluctuation. Zhuowen was no stranger to this fluctuation. It was the sign of someone who had reached the 3rd step of Dao confirmation. Oh, it's actually Lei Fudao. I always thought that this old fellow was dead. I didn't expect him to still be alive. In the end, he even stepped into the 3rd step of Dao confirmation. Yin Wuxia made a soft sound of surprise. His gaze fell on the old man in the square, and he seemed very surprised. Zhuowen naturally did not know the identity of this old man, but Yin Wuxia had secretly introduced him to him, so he had some understanding of him. Lei Fudao was the previous court master of the Lightning God Park, but his talent was far inferior to the current Lei Liqian. He had been in the position for many years, but his cultivation had always been stuck at the half-step Genesis stage. Later on, Lei Liqian defied the heavens and smoothly became a creator lord. Lei Fudao abdicated and passed the position of court lord to Lei Liqian. As for Lei Fudao, he was in seclusion and never appeared, because it was too long ago. The cultivators in Lightning God Park and the outside world all subconsciously thought that Lei Fudao might have fallen. However, they did not expect Lei Fudao to appear in Lightning God Park again, and as a creator lord at that. Master, this old man is nothing to be afraid of. He's just an early-stage creator lord, Yin Wuxia whispered to Zhuowen. The many cultivators in the square also became friendly. They also felt the powerful aura on Lei Fudao's body, and they knew that Lei Fudao had successfully advanced to the Genesis stage. The people who had fallen into panic because of Lei Liqian's death also calmed down a lot. They knew that as long as their Lightning God Park still had the support of a creator lord, their Lightning God Park would be able to stand tall. Lei Fudao stood upright. His slightly turbid eyes fell on Yin Wuxia, who was beside Zhuowen. He was first stunned, then a look of shock appeared on his face. After that, everyone noticed to their surprise that Lei Fudao bowed respectfully to Yin Wuxia and said, "Could it be that you're the 10 Extremes Yin Corpse Sect's elder Yin Wuxia?" "He's from the 10 Extremes Yin Corpse Sect." Everyone in the square was in an uproar. They somewhat understood why Lei Zixuan wanted to bring these 2 people to the Lightning God Sky platform. The 10 Extremes Yin Corpse Sect was one of the 5 Dao palaces, and its status was extremely high. Yin Wuxia was also an elder of the 10 Extremes Yin Corpse Sect, so his status was naturally higher than the Lightning God Park's master. There was naturally no problem for him to ascend the Lightning God Sky platform. As for Zhuowen, he was subconsciously ignored by everyone. The main reason was that Zhuowen was too young. In their opinion, this white-robed youth should be one of Yin Wuxia's juniors or subordinates. That's me. In Wuxia cupped his hands casually. Lei Fudao's strength and status were below his, so he naturally did not need to pay too much attention to him. Elderine, please excuse us for not going out to welcome you. It's just that the Thunder God heavenly platform isn't a place to receive guests. Elderine, why don't you come down and follow me to the guest hall? Lei Fu chuckled. Elderine snorted and said coldly, this old man has come here for an important matter. I'm not here to receive guests. What's the matter? Lei Fudao's heart skipped a beat as he felt that something was amiss. Lei Zixuan will tell you later. It's not appropriate for you to ask me. Elder Yin did not say anything else, but stood silently beside Zhuowen. Lei Fudao looked at Zhuowen with some astonishment. From his point of view, it seemed that Yin Wuxia valued the white-robed youth beside him very much, and faintly felt that he was inferior to the white-robed youth. Lei Fudao thought of an unbelievable possibility, but he quickly shook his head and rejected it. He felt that the idea he had just come up with was too unrealistic. Zixuan, you said that Li Tian has fallen. You have evidence? Lei Fudao turned to look at Lei Zixuan and asked with a grave expression. Lei Zixuan took out a jade pendant that was covered in cracks and said, "This jade pendant contains the life imprint of the court master. Now that it is shattered, it means that the court master's life has already passed away." Lei Fudao waved his right hand and took the jade pendant from Lei Zixuan's hand. After carefully examining it, he finally sighed and said, "Li Tian has indeed fallen." Everyone sighed, but at the same time, there was even more anger and confusion. Who had killed their court master in the host region? Could it really be a force on the level of the 5 Dao palaces? Zixuan, do you know who killed Li Tian? Lei Fudao's expression was unsightly, and there was a trace of anger in his voice as he began to question Lei Zixuan. Lei Litian was the disciple that Lei Fudao was most proud of. To be able to smoothly reach the 3rd step of Dao and become a late-stage god of creation in tens of thousands of years, it could be said that Lei Litian's talent was extremely terrifying. If Lei Litian had more time, it would not be impossible for him to lead the lightning god's court to an even higher peak. Lei Zixuan glanced at Zhuowen and hesitated for a moment before saying, "I'm actually not too sure, but I found this at the scene where the court master died." Chapter 2846. The position of the court master, Blood Prison's assassins. Lei Fudao's eyes were filled with anger as he asked in confusion, "Our Thunder God's court has never provoked the Blood Prison before. Why would the Blood Prison send assassins to kill Lei Litian?" "I don't know either. Perhaps the Lei Garden Master offended someone back then. So that person might have bribed the Blood Prison to assassinate the Garden Master." Lei Zixuan said, "The Blood Prison is too despicable. They actually tried to assassinate our Garden Master for no reason. This hatred, our Thunder God's court, will not live under the same sky as them. Yes, that Blood Prison is too arrogant. Perhaps our Thunder God's court cannot compare to that Blood Prison, but we are not someone he can bully at will." Everyone in the square was enraged, revealing their anger. Lei Fudao gestured towards the plaza with his hand, causing the plaza to quiet down. He looked at Lei Zixuan and said, "Zixuan, don't you have 2 important things to announce? What is the other thing?" Lei Zixuan hesitated for a moment, then said in a deep voice, "Before Lei Garden Master died, he had already appointed me as the new master of Thunder God's court," after saying that Lei Zixuan's words were immediately drowned out by the uproar in the plaza. "The position of the Garden Master is too childish. Although Great Senior Sister's talent is very good, her cultivation is still shallow. It is not appropriate for her to succeed the position of the Garden Master now. I also feel that Great Senior Sister is too young. If a few thousand years later, I have no objections to Great Senior Sister succeeding the position of the garden master. Lei Zixuan's face was a little ugly. She did not expect that after the announcement of her succeeding the position of the garden master, there would be so many objections. Of course, this was not something that Lei Zixuan was willing to do, but something that Zhuowen had asked her to do. Right now, Lei Zixuan was Zhuowen's servant, and her life and death were all in Zhuowen's hands. If Lei Zixuan became the master of Thunder God's court, it would mean that Zhuowen had taken control of the entire Thunder God's court. It was just that Lei Zixuan was in the light while Zhuowen was in the dark. However, what Zhuowen did not expect was that Lei Fudao would actually appear in Thunder God's court. If it wasn't for Lei Fudao, with Lei Zixian's prestige, it wouldn't be too difficult for her to become the Lightning God's garden master. But now that Lei Fudao had appeared, it was a huge obstacle for Lei Zixuan to succeed the position of Yuan master. After all, Lei Fudao was the previous court master. Now that he had come out of seclusion, he had successfully validated the third step of the Tao. In the Lightning God Garden, there was no one more qualified than Lei Fudao to succeed the position of Lightning God Garden Master. Lei Fu chuckled and gestured for everyone to quiet down. He smiled at Lei Zixuan and said, "Zixuan, both Li Tian and I have seen your talent. In my opinion, your talent is even stronger than Li Tian's. But you also know that your experience is still shallow and your cultivation is not high. If you succeed the position of the court master now, I'm afraid it will be difficult to convince the masses. How about this? I'll temporarily take over the position of court master. When you reach the third step of Tao validation, I'll abdicate my position." Lei Fudao's tone was very calm, and it was unanimously approved by everyone in the square. Lei Zixuan frowned slightly and glanced at Zhuowen. Obviously, she wanted Zhuowen to make the decision. "Senior Lei, you may have misunderstood. Before Lightning God Garden Master died, he had already made a will for Miss Lei to succeed the position of the court master. Miss Lei's experience is indeed not high, but there is no need to give the position to you. If Senior Lei is really thinking for the sake of the Lightning God Garden, then he should support Miss Lei to succeed the position. You only need to assist from the side." Zhuowen stepped forward at this moment. His eyes were cold, and his voice was clear and melodious, spreading throughout the square. Zhuowen was very clear about what Lei Fudao was planning. If he really gave the position of the court master to Lei Fudao, he was afraid that Lei Fudao would not give up his position in the future. Moreover, even if Lei Fudao would give up his position, Lei Fudao was not Zhuowen's subordinate. Letting Lei Fudao succeed the position would not benefit Zhuowen at all. Lei Fudao frowned slightly and looked at Zhuowen with some displeasure. He felt that this kid was meddling in other people's business. "Who do you think you are? You are not a member of the Lightning God Garden. What right do you have to say such things? Senior Lei is the previous court master. Now that he has come out of seclusion, he has advanced to the creator stage. He deserves to succeed the position of court master. Moreover, didn't Senior Lei say that? As long as eldest senior sister advances to the creator stage in the future, she will naturally give up her position again. Don't you understand?" In the square, a young cultivator suddenly pointed at Zhuowen and berated him. His eyes were full of disdain. Zhuowen was stunned. Then he grinned at that young cultivator, revealing a row of white teeth. When everyone saw Zhuowen's smile, they inexplicably felt a chill run down their spines. That young cultivator also felt a chill run down his spine and subconsciously retreated. However, he soon felt a powerful force enveloping his body and pulling him over. He involuntarily appeared on the rooftop, and his neck was already in the palm of the white-robed young man's right hand. Everyone in the square was in an uproar. Then they revealed angry expressions. Clearly, Zhuowen's actions had completely infuriated them. There were even some impulsive cultivators who directly attacked Zhuowen on the rooftop. Zhuowen waved his sleeves and took out array flags. He set up a powerful Eternal level defensive array around him and easily blocked the attacks from the square. An Eternal level divine array master. Lei Fudao was a little surprised. He was a little surprised that Zhuowen could cultivate the array Dao to such a level at such a young age. It was really not simple. Young man, aren't you being too presumptuous? This is the territory of the Thunder God Garden. You can't act presumptuously here. Lei Fudao's eyes were gloomy. He took a step forward and blasted his right palm towards Zhuowen's head. Lei Fudao used all of his strength. A golden light rose up like a blazing sun and transformed into an incomparably huge golden palm. He intended to kill Zhuowen in one move. Crack! After all, Lei Fudao was an early-stage creator. The Eternal level array that Zhuowen had set up temporarily was useless in front of Lei Fudao's attack. Zhuowen stood motionless. His eyes were as calm as water. He didn't care about Lei Fudao's full-strength attack at all. However, when Lei Fudao's attack was about to land on Zhuowen, an even more terrifying force blasted over and instantly disintegrated Lei Fudao's attack. Lei Fudao's face changed drastically. The moment his attack was disintegrated, he retreated. However, the force was too fast and terrifying. It landed on his right cheek as if he had foreseen it. It was a skinny palm that gave Lei Fudao a hard slap in the face. Lei Fudao screamed and fell to the ground. He spat out blood mixed with broken teeth. His body twitched, and he couldn't get up. He was seriously injured by this slap. Chapter 2847. Immortal masters cannot be humiliated no matter what. Lei Fudao was still an early-stage god of creation, yet he had been knocked to the ground with a single slap. This was far too humiliating. Lei Fudao struggled to get up and looked at Yin Wuxia, who had suddenly appeared in front of Zhuowen with fear in his eyes. He didn't understand. After all, Yin Wuxia was an elder of the Ten Extremities Yin Corpse sect. However, their lightning god garden was a powerful Dao palace, so Yin Wuxia should at least give them some face. Unfortunately, Yin Wuxia had decisively attacked him for a junior, knocking him to the ground and seriously injuring him. Elder Yin, what do you mean by this? Lei Fudao asked in confusion. Elder Lei, do you know the identity of the person you're about to attack? If you really injure him, I'm afraid even your life won't be worth it, Yin Wuxia said with a cold gaze. Lei Fudao was stunned. He finally started to take Zhuowen seriously. For Yin Wuxia to be so cautious, this person's identity was definitely not simple. Who is he? Lei Fudao asked with some reluctance. Lady Lei, tell him who I am. Also, do I have the right to say anything? Zhuowen's right hand was still holding the young cultivator's neck. His gaze was cold and emotionless as he spoke to the stunned Lei Zixuan. Lei Zixuan came back to her senses and hurriedly said, Elder Lei, this person is called Zhuowen. He has another title, which is the 5th Immortal Master of the Pill Array Immortal Alliance. Lei Fudao was stunned. He naturally knew about the Immortal Masters of the Pill Array Immortal Alliance. The Pill Array Immortal Alliance was simply too famous in the host region. It was a colossus that could be compared to the 5 Dao palaces. Immortal Masters were the highest level existences in the Pill Array Immortal Alliance, second only to the Alliance Master. There were only 4 Immortal Masters in the entire Pill Array Immortal Alliance. Including the new Immortal Master Zhuowen, there were only 5. In terms of fame and status, the Immortal Masters of the Pill Array Immortal Alliance were much higher than Yin Wuxia in the Ten Extremities Yin Corpse sect. This old man has eyes but failed to recognize Mount Tai. I didn't know Master Immortal's identity and offended you just now. I hope Master Immortal can forgive me. Lei Fudao's face was thick enough. After knowing Immortal Master Zhua Wen's status, his attitude immediately changed 180 degrees. Although his body was still in a state of serious injury, Lei Fudao still forced himself to get up and bowed to Zhuowen. Lei Fu didn't doubt Zhuowen's identity. After all, it was Yin Wuxie who said it himself. Yin Wuxie was an elder of the 10 Extreme Yin Corps sect, and his strength was much stronger than Lei Fudao's. How could he deceive him? As for the young cultivator whose neck was being grabbed by Zhuowen, he was trembling in fear. He regretted offending Zhuowen just now. If he knew that Zhuowen was an immortal master of the Pill Array Immortal Alliance, he wouldn't have spoken so carelessly. Immortal Master, please spare my life. I didn't mean to offend you just now. I hope Immortal Master can forgive me this time. The young cultivator quickly begged for mercy. Immortal Masters can't be insulted. You should pay the price for speaking rudely. Zhuowen put down the young cultivator and looked at him indifferently. The young cultivator's face was pale, but he was a decisive person. He gritted his teeth and broke his right arm, then kowtowed 3 times to Zhuowen. Leave. Zhuowen waved his hand and didn't pursue the matter. He knew that this young cultivator was most likely instigated by Lei Fudao. If he didn't have the identity of an immortal master, all the cultivators in the square would have been instigated by this young cultivator, and it would have caused chaos. The young cultivator was deeply grateful and quickly left the rooftop. He didn't want to stay for a moment longer. Miss Lei is my friend. She did receive the will of Court Lord Lei Li and is worthy of being the next court lord. Zhuowen stood on the rooftop and looked around. His clear voice sounded again. At this moment, the voices of opposition in the plaza dwindled significantly. They all knew Celestial Master Zhua Wen's identity, and he also had the protection of a late-stage god of creation like Yin Wuxie. Thus, no one dared to voice their objections. As Miss Lei's friend, if Miss Lei can become the court lord, I will definitely refine a promotion pill of the corresponding grade for everyone. All of them will be special grade pills. Zhuowen spoke again, but this time the entire square was in an uproar. There weren't many special grade promotion pills, even in the Thunder God Garden. These so-called promotion pills were used by Dao-confirming cultivators to break through to the next level. For example, the Heaven's Fate pill was a divine pill that cultivators needed to break through from Chaos Origin Lord to Heaven's Fate Lord. The divine pills that were of a higher grade than the Heaven's Fate pill were the Profound pill and the Eternal pill. At present, Zhuowen could only refine special grade Eternal pills. As for the higher grade Genesis pill, there was still a gap. However, Zhuowen's success rate was simply too terrifying. Moreover, the quality of the divine pills he refined were basically all special grade. This was Zhuowen's advantage, and also his secret to being able to refine a large number of divine pills. We support eldest senior sister to become the court lord. Upon hearing the benefits of special grade promotion pills, many cultivators on the square set aside their moral integrity and began to support Lei Zishuan. They couldn't wait for Lei Zishuan to become the court lord immediately. Zhuowen also did not expect that the method of gifting advancement divine pills would be so effective. What Zhuowen didn't know was that in every force, only a small number of disciples at the top of the pyramid could obtain cultivation resources. Most of the disciples were extremely short on cultivation resources. Even a big force like Thunder God Garden didn't have many alchemists. Moreover, they had to provide for them. The number of times they could refine pills was also limited, and the success rate was also very low. Although Thunder God Garden had a corresponding reserve of promotion pills, there weren't many of them. Naturally, they would give priority to the talented and powerful disciples. As for most of the disciples with mediocre talent, it would be difficult for them to obtain promotion pills. Now, Zhuowen's promise was undoubtedly a timely help for most of the disciples of Thunder God Garden. After all, most of the disciples didn't care about who would become the court lord as long as it wasn't a mediocre person. It wouldn't change their cultivation too much. However, this promise of Zhuowen's was related to their own interests. These disciples naturally flocked like ducks and turned to support Lei Zixuan. Lei Fu's face turned ugly. He sighed softly and knew that it was impossible for him to compete for the court lord's position. Whether it was Zhuowen or Yin Wuxia, both of them had a higher status than him. Since both of them supported Lei Zixuan, he had no chance to compete with Lei Zixuan for the court lord's position. Congratulations, Zixuan. After you become the court lord, I hope that you can work hard in your cultivation and strive to reach the third step of the Tao. You can bring glory to Thunder God Garden. Lei Fu cupped his hands and congratulated Lei Zixuan, who was on the rooftop. Lei Zixuan cupped her hands and returned the greeting. The stone in her heart was finally put down. What she was most afraid of was that she couldn't become the court lord. This also meant that she was useless to Zhuowen. Chapter 2848. 10 Extremities Incorp's sect. In the following period of time, the Thunder God Park held a grand succession ceremony, and Lei Zixuan became the rightful owner of the Thunder God Park. In order to fulfill his promise, Zhuowen did not personally refine the promotion God pill. Instead, he contacted Huan Taiping of the Pill Array Immortal Alliance, hoping to exchange resources of equivalent value for the corresponding promotion God pill. The Pill Array Immortal Alliance had a large number of Pill Array masters in the host region, and the amount of God pills they had was extremely terrifying. There were many disciples in the Thunder God Park, and if Zhuowen wanted to refine the promotion God pill alone, it would take a lot of time. Therefore, other than the Eternal Pill, the rest of the God pills could be exchanged from the Pill Array Immortal Alliance. Huan Taiping agreed without any hesitation. Zhuowen was not surprised. After all, he was an immortal master of the Pill Array Immortal Alliance, and his status was high. Exchanging a large amount of God pills was within the permitted range. After doing all this, Zhuowen gave Lei Zixuan some instructions, then he left with Yin Wuxia and headed towards the Huangji aristocratic family. Zhuowen's process of subduing the Huangji aristocratic family was much simpler than the Thunder God Park. He was an immortal master of the Pill Array Immortal Alliance, so he easily subdued all the pill masters of the Huangji aristocratic family and controlled the Huangji aristocratic family's source of God pills. At the same time, Yin Wuxia used his status as an elder of the 10 Extremities Incorp sect to completely suppress the upper echelons of the Huangji aristocratic family and firmly controlled them in his hands. Zhuowen summoned the upper echelons of the Ryuka from the outside world and slowly began to control the Huangji aristocratic family. The current Ryuka was mainly led by Lu Hantian and Long Xiaotian, and Lu Hantian and Long Xiaotian's cultivation speed was extremely fast, and they had both become Heaven's Will Masters. Originally, with Lu Hantian and Long Xiaotian's cultivations, it was impossible for them to control such a large force like the Huangji aristocratic family. Fortunately, Yin Wuxia had many tricks up his sleeves. He himself had a half-step Genesis Lord Chief corpse, and Zhuowen suppressed it in the Huangji aristocratic family to assist Lu Hantian and Long Xiaotian. Zhuowen took out a lot of resources and gave them to Lu Hantian and Long Xiaotian to distribute them as soon as possible. Of Dragon Clan's ancestral dragon families' territory, Dragon, and Dragon 9. The Dragon 9 Immortal Alliance, Dragon sect, was Dragon sect. After doing all this, Zhuowen was still not at ease. Hence, He set up many formations and restrictions in the core area where the Long family's upper echelons were. These formations included defensive formations, offensive formations, trap and kill formations, and so on. They included most of the formations. These array formations were basically pinnacle, eternal grade, grand arrays. With so many pinnacle, eternal grade grand arrays stacked together, the power of this grand array formation had far exceeded the scope of an eternal grade grand array formation. Its power was close to that of a Genesis grade grand array formation. Zhuo-Wen had spent several months of painstaking effort to set up these large formations before finally completing them. The power of these formations was extremely terrifying. Even God of Creation initial stage cultivators wouldn't be able to break through this formation. As for God of Creation late stage cultivators like Yin Wuxia, it was hard to say. However, Zhuo-Wen wasn't worried. The strongest Huang-Ji aristocratic families, Huang Wu was only an early-stage Genesis lord. Now that he had dealt with Huang Wu, no one in the Huang-Ji aristocratic family could threaten this immortal array. Just in case, Zhuo-Wen gave the universe explosion array that Ji Wuming had given him to Long Xiaotian. If anything happened to the Huang-Ji aristocratic family, he could use this universe explosion array. After all, the universe explosion array was a Genesis-level immortal array. Even if Yin Wuxia was trapped in it, he would be in a sorry state. After the Huang-Ji aristocratic family's matters were settled, Zhuo-Wen set off for the 10 Extremities Yin Corps sect. This time, the way for Zhuo-Wen and Yin Wuxia to head to the 10 Ultimate Yin Corps sect was much simpler. They could only use the ancient teleportation array of the Huang-Ji family clan to teleport to a Dao Mansion level force that was closest to the 10 Ultimate Yin Corps sect. Zhuo-Wen then flew directly from this Dao Palace to the 10 Extremities Yin Corps sect's territory. One had to admit that the 10 Extremities Yin Corps sect lived up to its name. The entire area was filled with an eerie atmosphere. The moment Zhuo-Wen entered the 10 Extremities Yin Corps sect's territory, he felt as if he had entered a mass grave. It gave him goosebumps. Master, we're almost at the entrance to the 10 Extremities Yin Corps sect. Yin Wuxia secretly transmitted a message to Zhuo-Wen while Zhuo-Wen was sizing up the environment within the 10 Extremities Yin Corps sect. Zhuo-Wen looked ahead, and indeed, he could vaguely see an entrance within the shroud of Yin Qi. The entrance was huge. When Zhuo-Wen and Long Xiaotian approached, Zhuo-Wen realized that the cliffs on both sides of the entrance were actually piles of white bones. Not only that, but the buildings that appeared vaguely at the entrance were all white. They were actually all piles of white bones. Zhuo-Wen frowned slightly. Before entering the entrance, he had completely concealed his aura. At the same time, his face was distorted, and he turned into a haggard young man with messy hair. After changing his appearance, Zhuo-Wen put away the space-time roulette and silently stood behind Yin Wuxia. According to Yin Wuxia's plan, Zhuo-Wen's current identity was a disciple that Yin Wuxia had accidentally taken in from the outside world. He planned to send him back to the 10 Extremities Yin Corps sect to be nurtured. Elder Yin. When Yin Wuxia and Zhuo-Wen arrived at the entrance, the two guards at the entrance hurriedly prostrated themselves on the ground and bowed to Yin Wuxia. Zhuo-Wen also noticed that the two guards were trembling all over, as if they were very afraid of Yin Wuxia. Get up! Yin Wuxia's gaze was calm. After he finished speaking, he led Zhuo-Wen into the depths of the entrance. After Yin Wuxia had left for a long time, the two guards at the entrance slowly stood up with lingering fear on their faces. Looks like you're quite famous in the 10 Extremities Yin Corps sect. Those two guards are very afraid of you. Zhuo-Wen glanced at Yin Wuxia indifferently and said with some interest. Yin Wuxia's dignified expression had long since disappeared. He smiled at Zhuo-Wen and said, Master, you must be joking. After all, I'm an elder of the Ten Extremities Incorp sect. With my fierce reputation, it's not surprising that ordinary disciples are afraid of me. Zhuowen did not mind. He said indifferently, "Tell me about the Ten Extremities Incorp sect." In Wuxia did not dare to be negligent. He explained in detail the distribution of the Ten Extremities Incorp sect, as well as some of the powerhouses to pay attention to. According to In Wuxia, there were 10 elders in the Ten Extremities Incorp sect. Each elder was a powerhouse in the third step of the doctrine realm. In Wuxia was also one of the 10 elders. However, in terms of strength and reputation, In Wuxia was only ranked 9th. Zhuowen was a little surprised. In Wuxia was a late-stage creator. If he was only ranked 9th among the 10 elders, didn't that mean that there were 8 elders in the Ten Extremities Incorp sect who were stronger than late-stage creators? Looks like the Ten Extremities Incorp sect is indeed a Dao Palace faction. They actually have so many third-step Dao validation powerhouses. Chapter 2849. News from Sakyamuni according to In Wuxia, the sect master of the Ten Extremities Incorp sect was called Senki In. His strength was unfathomable, and it was said that he had been a peak lord of creation tens of thousands of years ago. Now, tens of thousands of years had passed, and Senki In had spent most of his time cultivating in seclusion. In Wuxia guessed that Senki In had most likely advanced to the Master of Heaven-piercing realm. Zhuowen narrowed his eyes, and his heart was filled with shock. The Master of Heaven-piercing realm was the final stage of the third step of the Dao-confirming realm, and it was also the stage closest to the heaven-crushing realm. In the Xianmi heavenly domain, those who could reach the Master of Heaven-piercing realm were all peerless powerhouses with extraordinary means. They were the true bigwigs of the Xianmi heavenly domain. By the way, Elder In, does your Ten Extremities Incorp sect have an elder called Ba Jingwei? Zhuowen suddenly asked. Ba Jingwei was one of the 5 lords of creation who had hunted down Uxian. Although Ba Jingwei had been injured by Uxian's final counterattack, he had not died. You know Elder Ba? In Wuxia asked in surprise. I don't know him. I just heard about him from others. Zhuowen shook his head. In Wuxia nodded slightly and said, Elder Ba is the 4th elder. His status in the Ten Extremities Incorp sect is much higher than mine, and he is also very strong. However, I heard that he was severely injured a long time ago after joining forces to attack someone. He even alarmed the sect master, and his strength was reduced by a portion. Zhuowen's eyes flashed, and he continued to ask, Do you know how strong Ba Jingwei is now? In Wuxia thought for a moment, and said, When Elder Ba was at his peak, his cultivation should have been at the mid-stage of the Lord of Creation realm. Later on, he suffered very serious injuries, and his cultivation dropped. He should only be at the early stage of the Lord of Creation realm. Zhuowen's heart trembled. Ba Jingwei was truly terrifying. Even after suffering the backlash of Uxian's death, his cultivation had only dropped by a small stage. Zhuowen's heart was heavy, whether it was his original body or his avatar. They were far from being a match for Ba Jingwei. Even if he used the Ho-E Divine Bow and Ho-E Divine Arrows, he might not be able to kill Ba Jingwei. However, Zhuowen was not in a hurry. The 1,000-year poison would only take effect after 1,000 years. In 1,000 years, Zhuowen was confident that his strength would surpass Ba Jingwei's. At that time, it wouldn't be difficult for him to help Uxian get rid of those murderers. That's right. Master, there's one more thing I need to tell you. Previously, one of the geniuses from our Ten Extremities Incorp sect wanted your life. He even asked me to kill you on his behalf. In Wuxia suddenly said. Zhuowen was stunned and asked subconsciously, Who is it? That person is called Sakyamuni. He's the 4th elder Ba, Jingwei's last disciple. He's deeply appreciated by Ba Jingwei, and the sect master has also paid attention to him. Now, his status in the sect is very high. As soon as Yin Wuxia finished speaking, he noticed that Zhuowen's expression was strange. He subconsciously said, "Master, did I say something wrong?" "No, you didn't say anything wrong. The person you mentioned is called Sakyamuni. Where did you find him?" Zhuowen asked solemnly. Although Yin Wuxia was a little surprised by Zhuowen's reaction, he still answered honestly, "I heard that Ba Jingwei accidentally found him in a small faction called Baihong Hall. He was shocked and took the Nadi Shiva back as his last disciple." Speaking of which, Sakyamuni is indeed extremely extraordinary. Supposedly, his ancestral Tao root is at the heaven rank, and his cultivation speed is extremely fast. He's only been in the sect for a few hundred years, yet he's actually stepped into the second step of Tao validation, the Lord of Profundity. Supposedly, he's charging into the eternal overlord realm. Moreover, his combat strength is extremely extraordinary. At that time, he was merely the heaven's mandate lord, yet he was able to fight an eternal overlord. Although he lost, he made the eternal overlord pay a corresponding price. After he advanced into the Lord of Profundity, the eternal overlord realm expert was no match for him at all. Only the half-step Genesis overlords could go against him. When he spoke up to hear, Yin Wuxia couldn't help but sigh with admiration. Sakyamuni's natural talent was monstrous indeed. Yin Wuxia knew that so long as Sakyamuni was given enough time, he would be completely capable of reaching the third step of Tao validation. Moreover, Sakyamuni had a heaven-rank ancestral Tao root, and he'd attracted the attention of the sect master. His future was limitless. Zhuowen's expression was slightly unsightly. He was sure that the Sakyamuni Yin Wuxia spoke of was Sakyamuni from the 8 heavens. He remembered that Sakyamuni had been taken away by Sun Qi, and wasn't Sun Qi a cultivator from the White Rainbow Hall? However, Zhuowen hadn't expected that he'd clearly chopped off Sakyamuni's head and annihilated his soul. Logically speaking, the Nadi Shiva should have died without a doubt. However, not only had the Nadi Shiva survived, but he'd even joined the 10 Extremes Yin Corp sect. What was even more inconceivable to Zhuowen was that Sakyamuni's ancestral Tao root had actually become a heaven-rank ancestral Tao root. If he wasn't wrong, Sun Qi had tested Sakyamuni's ancestral Tao root when he was in the 8 heavens. Even though Sakyamuni's ancestral Tao root wasn't bad, it was only an earth-rank ancestral Tao root. Yet now, it had actually become a heaven-rank ancestral Tao root. Could it be that Sakyamuni's ancestral Tao root can evolve? When he thought up to here, Zhuowen's heart felt extremely heavy. He felt that the Nadi Shiva definitely possessed some sort of great secret. Otherwise, it was impossible for him to survive and evolve his ancestral Tao root. Yin Wuxia noticed that Zhuowen's expression changed indeterminately, and he asked probingly, "Master, are you acquainted with the Nadi Shiva? We've met a few times, but we're not very familiar with each other. You don't have to worry about this matter. Help me arrange a position that can allow me to enter the Umbra Hell first." Zhuowen's expression was calm. Even though he was rather shocked by what had happened to Sakyamuni, he didn't really care about it. Sakyamuni definitely had some secrets, but Zhuowen's secrets were even greater. Moreover, the Pangu's sacred body that he cultivated was unprecedented and extremely powerful. He didn't want to bother about Sakyamuni right now. After all, his main objective for entering the Yin Corp sect this time was to obtain the underworld elusive flower. If he offended the Nadi Shiva and alerted the entire Yin Corp sect, then he would lose more than he gained. Moreover, Zhuowen believed that since Sakyamuni had lost to him once, he had already subconsciously developed a shadow over him. No matter how quickly Sakyama's strength increased, as long as he faced Zhuowen, there would always be a shadow in his heart. When that time came, the chances of him losing to Zhuowen again would only increase. After Yin Wuxia brought Zhuowen to his cave residence, he bid farewell to Zhuowen and left alone to help Zhuowen arrange the position in the Umbra Hell. Yin Wuxia's cave residence was extremely large. Even though it was decorated very luxuriously, it still couldn't conceal the gloomy atmosphere that was hidden within the cave residence. Zhuowen didn't mind and casually found a place to meditate and rest. After a while, there was a knock on the door of the cave residence. Zhuowen raised his eyebrows. He was a little surprised that Yin Wuxia was so efficient. He actually managed to get it done so quickly. Chapter 2850. The gathering of freaks the moment the icy beauty saw Zhuowen. She was obviously stunned for a moment. Then she asked vigilantly, "Who are you?" "Senior sister, please don't misunderstand. I'm Xiaowen, Elder Yin's new disciple. After he brought me to the Immortal's cave, he left because he had some matters to attend to, and left me to rest in the Immortal's cave." Zhuowen spoke in a natural and unrestrained manner. The iceberg beauty's expression softened as she said, "So you are Master's new disciple. No wonder I haven't seen you before. Where did Master go?" "You know?" Zhuowen shook his head. He really didn't know where Yin Wuxia went. He only knew that Yin Wuxia was helping him deal with the matters of the underworld. "He's not here." The iceberg beauty was somewhat anxious. Soon after, she looked at Zhuowen as if she had thought of something and said, "Junior brother Xiaowen, can you let me into the cave for a moment?" "Senior sister, I really have an important matter that requires Master's personal handwriting." The iceberg beauty thought that Zhuowen would purposely refuse. She had even prepared all kinds of excuses. However, Zhuowen generously gave up his position, allowing this ice beauty to enter the cave. "Junior brother one, I really have to thank you this time. I'll take Master's letter. I'll send a message to Master about this." The iceberg beauty smiled and hurriedly entered the cave. She swiftly picked up a bamboo scroll from a desk and was about to leave in a hurry. "Senior sister, what do you want to do with Master's letter?" Zhuowen asked with a smile. "I'm going to take a look at the monstrous genius meeting. It's said that our sect's eldest senior brother Gue Ling has gathered the other 4 monstrous geniuses of the Sun-Chasing Temple, Falling Star Mountain, Void Palace, and Scarlet Mountain Villa to discuss the Tao together. This is a rare opportunity. I really want to see the 5 monstrous geniuses of our host region." The iceberg beauty was in a hurry. She casually explained to Zhuowen and left the cave. Zhuowen was deep in thought. He had heard of the 5 monstrous geniuses before. It was said that the 5 monstrous geniuses were the most powerful geniuses in the 5 Tao palaces. Every genius represented the strongest fighting force of the younger generation in their respective Tao palace factions. In the host region, the 5 great geniuses were idols and targets of worship for many young cultivators. "I'll go take a look too." Zhuowen thought for a while and finally decided to follow the ice beauty to see the 5 monsters. Zhuowen himself was already monstrous enough. He also wanted to see how monstrous these so-called 5 monstrous geniuses were. Before he left, Zhuowen sent a message to Yin Wuxia, telling him to go take a look at the monster pageant. "Junior brother, why are you here?" The iceberg beauty couldn't help but ask when she saw the young man beside her. Her beautiful eyes were filled with surprise. "Senior sister, I've heard of the 5 monstrous geniuses for a long time. This time, the 5 of them are gathered together to discuss the Tao. I don't want to miss it. I just don't know if the letter in your hand can let us enter the venue," Zhuowen said with a smile. "Of course." The iceberg beauty agreed without hesitation. After all, she had obtained the letter thanks to Zhuowen. After that, Zhuowen and the Iceberg Beauty chatted happily. He finally found out that the Iceberg Beauty's name was Qiu Linglong. She was Yin Wuxie's only female disciple. Junior brother Xiaowen, we're here. This is the place where the 5 monstrous geniuses are discussing the Tao. Without an elder's letter, ordinary disciples can't enter. Qiu Linglong pointed at a huge courtyard that had appeared in front of them. The courtyard was surrounded by extremely tall walls. Furthermore, there was a powerful spirit formation set up around the courtyard. At this moment, the courtyard was densely packed with cultivators. These cultivators were all looking at the courtyard, wanting to see the scenery inside. Unfortunately, the array restriction outside the courtyard covered the scene inside. This made many cultivators who were looking forward to it quite disappointed. Qiu Linglong brought Zhuowen and squeezed into the crowd. However, just as Qiu Linglong was about to hand the letter to the guard at the entrance of the courtyard, an arm suddenly swept over and snatched the letter from Qiu Linglong's hand. Qiu Linglong was stunned. Her beautiful eyes stared at a male cultivator not far away and said angrily, "Shun Zipping, what are you doing? Why did you snatch my letter?" The male cultivator, called Shun Zipping, looked to be about 30 years old. He had a fierce face, and one could tell at a glance that he wasn't a good person. Shun Zipping patted the letter in his hand and looked at Qiu Linglong, whose eyes were almost spitting fire, and said jokingly, "Junior Sister Qiu, what are you talking about? When did I snatch your letter? This handwritten book is mine. Are you blind?" As soon as Shun Zipping's words came out, many people around him echoed. Obviously, these people should be Shun Zipping's people. Qiu Linglong was so angry that smoke was coming out of her 7 orifices. She stomped her jade-like foot and rushed towards Shun Zipping. Her right hand formed a palm and mercilessly attacked, wanting to snatch the letter in Shun Zipping's hand. Zhuowen couldn't help but shake his head when he saw Qiu Linglong actually attacking impulsively. Qiu Linglong's cultivation wasn't high. She was only at the peak of Hunyuan Master, but Shun Zipping was a genuine master of destiny. Qiu Linglong pounced on Shun Zipping and fought him head-on. She was simply asking for trouble. Sure enough, Shun Zipping suddenly punched and pushed Qiu Linglong back until she stopped in front of Zhuowen. Then, she spat out a mouthful of blood. "Junior brother Xiaowen, I'm really sorry. I actually failed to live up to the letter you gave me." Qiu Linglong's beautiful eyes were a little dim. She looked at Zhuowen with an apologetic expression. "Senior sister, the letter is ours. Could it be that you intend to give it up just like that?" Zhuowen suddenly spoke calmly. He walked slowly over to stand before Qiu Linglong, and he stared indifferently at Shun Zipping, who seemed complacent. Qiu Linglong's beautiful eyes shook. She hurriedly stopped Zhuowen when she saw him standing before her. "Junior brother Xiaowen, forget it. You're master's new disciple, whereas Shun Zipping is a master of destiny. You're not a match for him." Shun Zipping was complacent now. He waved the letter in front of Qiu Linglong and said, "Junior Sister Qiu, thank you for the letter. Since you're so courteous, then I'll accept it." As he spoke, Shun Zipping waved the letter in his hand, and then he looked at Zhuowen and said coldly, "Who do you think you are? You seem to be very unconvinced. Could it be that you intend to seize this letter from me?" Shun Zipping was only teasing Chen, because the aura of this unfamiliar young man before him was extremely restrained and much weaker than him. So, he didn't feel that this young man would dare to make a move against him. Chapter 28:51. A strong slap to the face. Shun Zipping was stunned by Zhuowen's words. He looked at Zhuowen and said, "What did you just say? You said you would attack me? And you said I would regret it?" At this point, Shun Zipping laughed. His laughter was filled with mockery, Many of the disciples behind Shin Zipping also burst into laughter. Zhuowen was definitely a new face to them. Many cultivators guessed that he should be a new disciple of the 10 Extremes Yin Corp sect. Moreover, Zhuowen's aura was restrained and did not look strong. He probably had not even crossed the threshold of Tao validation. Everyone subconsciously thought that he was bragging. Who recruited this kid? He's so arrogant. He actually dares to threaten senior brother Shin Zipping. Isn't he courting death? Newborn calves are really not afraid of tigers. When senior brother Shin Zipping attacks, I'm afraid this kid will cry for his parents. The number of disciples in the 10 Extremes Yin Corp sect was extremely terrifying, so there were still many disciples outside the courtyard. These disciples were basically not qualified to enter the courtyard. Firstly, they had no background, and secondly, they were not talented enough. Among the many disciples of the 10 Extremes Yin Corp sect, they could only be considered to be in the lower middle class. Therefore, among this group of disciples, Shun Zipping was considered to be one of the stronger ones. He was also the temporary leader of this group of cultivators. Zhuowen's gaze was calm, and his expression was calm. The mockery around him did not affect him at all. Qiu Linglong, on the other hand, was anxious. Her beautiful eyes flickered, and she kept winking at Zhuowen, telling him to stop talking. Zhuowen gave Qiu Linglong a reassuring look, which made Qiu Linglong even more anxious. However, there was nothing she could do. After all, she and Zhuowen had only met once. There were some things that she could not say out loud. I say, little brother, I see that you're new here. You probably don't know who I am. I'm Shin Zipping. Shin Zipping laughed mockingly. Halfway through his words, he was immediately interrupted by Zhuowen. I know your name is Shin Zipping, but what does that have to do with me? I was the one who brought this book here. You snatched it away, so it's your fault. Now that I'm taking it back, is there anything wrong with that? Do I need to listen to you blabbering in front of me? Zhuowen's words were very impolite. Shin Zipping's face suddenly became gloomy, and a trace of anger flashed in his eyes. He felt that this Zhuowen was really unreasonable. Ha! In the world of cultivators, the strong prey on the weak. This is even more true in the Yin Corp sect. The weak will never have the right to make their own decisions, and will always serve the strong. If you have the strength, then come and ask me for the letter. If you don't, then scram. Otherwise, don't blame me for being merciless. Shin Zipping looked at Zhuowen arrogantly, not concealing the disdain in his eyes. You're right, the weak prey on the strong. This is the law of cultivators. Since the Yin Corp sect is the same, then I won't hold back. After saying that, Zhuowen turned to look at Qiu Linglong and asked, Senior Qiu, as long as you don't kill him, it shouldn't be a problem to cripple him. After all, there are always casualties in a fight. Qiu Linglong didn't even react. She was shocked. She didn't expect Zhuowen to actually want to provoke Shin Zipping. Ha! As long as you don't die, anything is fine. Junior brother, don't worry, I won't beat you to death. I will break all the bones in your body and make you pay a heavy price for your improper words. Shin Zipping's eyes were cruel. He licked his lips and took a step forward, sweeping towards Zhuowen like the wind. His right fist was like the wind violently punching out. Blazing light surged out and covered the surface of Shin Zipping's fist. The power was extremely terrifying. This was Shin Zipping's strongest attack. When the surrounding cultivators saw Shin Zipping's fist, their expressions changed drastically. They knew that Shin Zipping was serious. Qiu Linglong's face was full of anxiety. After all, the calligraphy was given to her by Zhuowen. Moreover, Yin Wuxie could bring this kid back to the cave residence. It was obvious that Yin Wuxie valued this kid. If this kid was crippled because of her, she was afraid that she would have to bear the consequences in front of Yin Wuxia. However, Shun Ziping's attack was too fast. Qiu Linglong knew that she couldn't block this attack, so she could only watch as Shun Ziping's attack landed on Zhuowen's body. Ha! It seems that you're scared, silly. Then don't blame me for not showing mercy. When Shun Ziping saw that Zhuowen was actually standing motionless in the same place, the complacency in his eyes became even more intense. He laughed wildly and ruthlessly punched Zhuowen in the chest. Even if a master of destiny cultivator of the same level directly received this punch, there was a high chance that he would die. Bang! But soon, Shun Ziping's expression changed. This was because he realized that his fist felt as if it had hit a solid rock. A sharp pain came from the surface of his fist. As for the young man who should have been sent flying by his punch, he stood there as steady as a boulder, unmoving like a mountain. How is this possible? At this moment, Shun Ziping's expression was as if he had seen a ghost. It was filled with disbelief. His voice also became much sharper because of the shock. The strength of this punch is not bad. Unfortunately, it's too weak. Zhuowen shook his head, raised his right palm, and suddenly whistled towards Shun Ziping's cheek. Shun Ziping wanted to dodge, but his fists were in a heart-wrenching pain. Moreover, his fists seemed to be sucked in by Zhuowen's chest, making it difficult for him to withdraw his hands. He could only watch as Zhuowen's right palm got closer and closer to his cheek. Pa! The crisp sound of a slap rang out. Everyone couldn't help but cover their cheeks. It felt as if a slap had landed on their faces. It was simply too loud. As for Shun Ziping, he was slapped to the ground, and his entire head was shoved into the ground. Shun Ziping's whole body struggled, trying to pull his head out. Unfortunately, Zhuowen stepped on Shun Ziping's neck, firmly suppressing him under his feet. No matter how Shun Ziping struggled, he couldn't pull his head out. Immediately after, everyone felt dizzy. Zhuowen's right foot was firmly pressed against Shun Ziping's neck, and his left foot had already been raised. Everyone felt a chill run down their spines, as if they had thought of Zhuowen's next move. Their bodies couldn't help but tremble. Ah! A sudden scream rang out. Everyone pitifully looked at Zhuowen's left foot, which was now free, rudely aimed at Shun Ziping's body, as if he was using Shun Ziping's body as a human punching bag. How ruthless! In the crowd, some people secretly muttered. They felt that Zhuowen's actions were so decisive and ruthless without the slightest bit of mercy. On the other hand, Qiu Linglong's beautiful eyes widened as she stared blankly at Zhuowen, who was continuously kicking Shun Ziping like a human sandbag. She didn't expect her master's new junior to be so fierce. Although Shun Ziping could only be considered average among the many disciples of the 10 Extremes Yin Corp sect, he was still the destined master. Chapter 2852. Shun Hongxian, you're too arrogant. Let go of senior brother Shun. At this moment, Shun Ziping's lackeys, who were originally following behind him, came back to their senses and attacked Zhuowen. They wanted to stop Zhuowen from continuing to beat up Shun Ziping. None of these lackeys were weak. They were all Lord Hunyuan. They would be considered geniuses if they were in a normal Dao palace. However, in a large sect like the 10 Ultimate Yin Corp sect, they could only be considered average disciples. Zhuowen's feet didn't stop moving. He punched out with both fists, knocking down the dozen or so lackeys with each punch. Zhuowen did not show any mercy. He beat the lackeys half to death. They were all lying on the ground, unable to get up. Bang! Zhuowen's final kick landed on Shun Ziping's abdomen. The latter screamed in pain and flew straight up. Shun Ziping's head finally saw the light of day. However, it did not look good. His face was covered in dirt, and his right cheek was swollen beyond recognition. Bang! Shun Zipping fell to the ground. His body seemed to have fallen apart, and he could not move at all. If it were not for his rising and falling chest, everyone would have thought that he was dead. Qiu Linglong quickly ran to Zhuowen's side. Looking at Shun Zipping's miserable state, she carefully asked Zhuowen, "Junior brother? Oh no, senior brother, will Shun Zipping be okay?" Zhuowen waved his hand and said, "Senior sister, you should call me junior brother Xiao Wan. After all, I just entered the 10 Ultimate Incorp sect. According to seniority, I am below you. As for Shun Zipping, senior sister, don't worry. I'm just giving him a taste of his own medicine. He threatened to break all my bones, so I'm returning it to him." As he spoke, Zhuowen walked to Shun Zipping's side and unceremoniously took the letter from his hand. Who are you? How dare you beat me up like this? You'll regret it." Shun Zipping stuttered and was out of breath. "Shun Zipping, you and I have no enmity between us. If you didn't steal our letters, I wouldn't have made a move. Furthermore, before I made my move, I had already warned you to return my letter. If so, I wouldn't bother about it. But you were too conceited and didn't listen at all. Instead, you wanted to cripple me. I can tolerate you for a while, but I won't tolerate you forever. You asked for it." After Zhuowen finished speaking, he brought Qiu Linglong to the entrance of the courtyard. After showing the letter to the cultivator guarding the entrance, they smoothly entered the courtyard. Shun Zipping wanted to cry, but had no tears. If he had known that Zhuowen was so strong, he would not have taken the initiative to provoke him, unless his head was squeezed by a door. In the crowd, a cultivator carefully walked to Shun Zipping's side and helped him up. He said in a deep voice, "Senior brother Shun, all your bones and tendons are broken. Your injuries are very serious. You must go back and heal as soon as possible." Shun Zipping's gaze was vicious as he said, "Junior brother, wait a moment. Use my communication jade talisman to inform my brother Shun Hongxian. This kid injured me so badly. This enmity cannot be forgotten. My brother will definitely seek justice for me." Hearing this, the cultivator's expression changed slightly. He had heard of Shun Hongxuan's name before. He could be considered a famous genius in the 10 Extremes Incorp sect. Moreover, Shun Hongxian was the disciple of the 8th Elder, Mao Xinho. With the 8th Elder as his backer, his status in the sect was much higher than ordinary disciples. "What are you waiting for? Hurry up and inform my brother." Shun Zipping saw that the cultivator was hesitating and immediately scolded. The cultivator hurriedly responded and took out Shun Zipping's communication jade talisman to send a message to Shun Hongxian. In the message, there was naturally a detailed description of what had happened here. Naturally, there was no lack of Shun Zipping's embellishment, describing Zhuowen as an unpardonable evil. In the courtyard, the environment was elegant. There were pavilions, rockeries, jade stones, birdsong, and the fragrance of flowers. Moreover, there was a huge blue moon floating in the sky above the courtyard. It emitted a faint blue light that illuminated the entire courtyard, making it look mysterious and elegant. In the middle of the courtyard, there was a huge lake. The center of the lake reflected the blue moon. It was as if the moon was reflected in the water. Above the lake, there were 5 floating pavilions. Each of them was extremely luxurious, like a castle. These 5 floating pavilions represented the positions of the 5 great geniuses. Many cultivators had gathered on the ring-shaped shore of the lake. These cultivators were all seated on the ground, taking out wine from their respective spirit rings and drinking by themselves. Their gazes were blazing as they looked at the 5 floating pavilions in the middle of the lake. These cultivators were the young geniuses of the 10 Extremes Incorp sect. They were either very talented or had a strong background. On the shore, a black-clothed youth with a cold expression looked at the communication jade talisman at his waist. His face instantly darkened. "Brother Shen, what's wrong with you? You look so gloomy. Is there something that makes you unhappy?" A blue-robed man sitting beside the black-clothed youth noticed that the black-clothed youth's expression was not right and asked in surprise. "My good-for-nothing younger brother was beaten up at the entrance of the courtyard. All his bones and tendons are broken." The black-clothed youth was Shun Hongxian. He had just received Shun Ziwen's message and was furious. Who is so bold to beat up your younger brother? Don't they know that you are his elder brother?" The blue-robed man asked in surprise. "I heard that it was a man brought by Qiu Linglong. This pair of bitches actually dared to bully my younger brother. Don't blame me for being rude," Shen Hongxian said coldly. "Qiu Linglong is here too? I remember that this Qiu Linglong is merely an outer disciple of Elder Yin. She's very insignificant. Moreover, she's only Lord Han Yuan. Logically speaking, this woman doesn't have the qualifications to enter this demonic genius gathering, right?" The blue-robed man asked curiously. "I heard that this woman obtained Elder Yin's letter. Zipping might have gotten into a conflict with her because of the letter," Shun Hongxian said somewhat helplessly. The blue-robed man nodded slightly. He had some understanding of Shun Zipping's character. If Qiu Linglong had really obtained Yin Wuxia's letter, Shun Zipping would definitely snatch it. Logically speaking, with Shun Zipping's strength, it was more than enough to snatch the letter from Qiu Linglong. Unfortunately, he had encountered Zhuowen. With Qiu Linglong's strength, it is unlikely that she is Shun Zipping's opponent. Could it be that the man brought by Qiu Linglong beat up Shun Zipping? To be able to beat up Shun Zipping, he has to be at least Lord Tianming's strength. Such an expert is definitely not a nobody in the sect. "Who is it?" the blue-robed man asked curiously. Shun Hongxian shook his head and said, "Zipping's message said that Qiu Linglong called that man junior brother Xiaowan. This is the first time I've heard this name." Chapter 2853. Blue Moon Lake. These two should be entering the courtyard. We only need to pay attention to the entrance and find Qiu Linglong. Then we'll be able to see the man that Qiu Linglong brought with her. At that time, we'll be able to see his true face. The blue-robed man shook his head and stopped making wild guesses. He only diverted a bit of his attention to the entrance. He wanted to see who exactly the man that Qiu Linglong brought with her was. Shun Hongxuan's expression was gloomy as he did the same. Under Qiu Linglong's lead, Zhuowen walked through an elegant corridor and finally arrived in front of the huge lake in the center of the courtyard. It had to be said that the design of the courtyard was quite eye-catching. Along the way, it was overflowing with greenery. The wooden corridor was carved with exquisite patterns. While walking through the corridor, Zhuowen had the illusion that he had stepped into a fairyland. When he arrived in front of the lake and saw the huge blue moon hanging high above the lake, the amazement in his eyes could no longer be concealed. This courtyard is the garden of Senior Ghost Plume. It took him thousands of years to build it. The rockery and building materials inside are considered rare materials in the host region. They are priceless. Qiu Linglong was very excited. She looked left and right along the way and chattered like a cheerful sparrow. Her beautiful eyes could not hide her admiration for Ghost Plume. Zhuowen nodded inwardly. This Ghost Plume was indeed thoughtful. He had actually built this small garden to such a scale. He had really put in a lot of effort. When Zhuowen walked out of the corridor, he immediately felt two unfriendly gazes directed at him. Although these two gazes were very obscure, he could still feel them. He turned his head to look at the northeast corner of the lake. There were two cultivators sitting cross-legged there. These two cultivators were a black-robed youth and a blue-robed man. The black-robed youth's face was especially sharp and angular. He actually somewhat resembled Shun Zipping. Zhuowen's eyes flickered. He thought of something and naturally looked away. These two definitely had bad intentions towards him. However, he did not remind Xiao Linglong because he felt that these two were targeting him. If the two of them really attacked him, Zhuowen wouldn't mind teaching them a lesson. This is the Blue Moon Lake. Senior Ghost Plume personally plucked the blue moon from a secret realm. It hangs high above his courtyard. It is said that the blue moon contains a mysterious energy. Bathing in the blue moon's radiance can aid in cultivation and improve one's state of mind. Xiao Linglong didn't notice that there were two unkind gazes fixed on her. Her beautiful eyes were fanatically looking at the blue moon above the lake. Senior Qiu, let's find a seat first. Zhuowen smiled faintly. He brought Xiao Linglong to an empty spot at an extremely remote corner of the lakeside. He took out two prayer mats and a table. He also took out a few jugs of good wine and poured himself a drink. Xiao Linglong was like a little girl looking left and right. This made Zhuowen speechless as he shook his head. Brother Shun, don't be rash now. Senior Ghost Plume is currently discussing Dao with the other four monsters. If you make a move now, Senior Ghost Plume won't let you off. The blue-robed man hurriedly reminded him when he felt Shun Hongshuan's violent aura. Shun Hongxian took a deep breath and retracted his gaze. He closed his eyes and said in a low voice, "Brother Long, don't worry. I am not a rash person." The blue-robed man nodded and revealed a cruel smile. After Senior Ghost Plume's Dao discussion ends, Senior Ghost Plume will arrange a martial arts competition. It is said that the champion of the martial arts competition will receive guidance from Senior Ghost Plume and the other four monsters. I think, Brother Shin, that martial arts competition will be your chance to take revenge. I remember that Senior Ghost Plume only said that no one should die during the competition. He did not mention any other requirements, such as crippling that cultivator. That is also allowed. Shun Hongxian suddenly opened his eyes, revealing a flash of light. He cupped his fists at the blue-robed man and said, "Thank you for your reminder. Brother Lung, during the martial arts competition, I will make that cultivator suffer." After drinking a few cups of wine, Zhuowen's gaze landed on the 5 floating pavilions in the middle of the lake. In each pavilion sat a cultivator with a powerful aura. There were many maids serving the owners of the pavilions humbly. With Qiu Linglong's introduction, Zhuowen had a rough understanding of the 5 monsters in the pavilions. It was said that the 5 monsters were the strongest of the younger generation in the host region. They were the idols of all the young cultivators in the host region. Among them, Yi Qidong of the Scarlet Mountain Villa was publicly recognized as the strongest. His cultivation was the highest at the early stage of the Lord of Creation, and his battle prowess was extremely terrifying. It was said that he had once fought with an early-stage Lord of Creation without losing. The other 4 monsters were Ghost Plume of the 10 Extremes Incorp sect, Xing Jing of the Falling Star Mountain, Su Qinshin of the Void Palace, and Jiang Qixing of the Sun-Chasing Temple. Their cultivation levels were slightly lower than Yi Qidong's. They were only half-step Lords of Creation, and their strength was similar. They should have the battle prowess of a peak Lord of Creation. Yi Qidong was dressed in red, and his long hair was draped over his shoulders. He was so handsome that he did not look like a man. At this moment, Yi Qidong was lazily propping up his head with one hand as he watched Ghost Plume, and the other 3 discussed Dao in boredom. He was very conceited and was far stronger than Ghost Plume and the other 3. He did not care to discuss Dao with the other 4. If not for the fact that Ghost Plume had told him about the place where ancestral shaman Gong had died, he would not have even bothered to participate in this so-called monster gathering. In the distant past, before the primitive heavenly region had split, the 3 pure ones and the 12 ancestral shamans were the peak existences in this universe. It was said that both the 3 pure ones and the 12 ancestral shamans had the strength of a peak lord of creation. They were true peak experts. In the current astral age, not to mention peak astral master powerhouses, even astral master powerhouses were as rare as phoenix feathers and unicorn horns. The leaders of the 5 Tao palaces of the host region had not appeared for a long time. They were only suspected to be Lord of Creation experts, and it was not confirmed. Yi Qidong was the strongest genius of the Scarlet Mountain Villa and the leader of the 5 monsters of the host region. He knew more secrets than the average person. Yi Qidong knew that the Scarlet Mountain Villa's sect master was indeed an early Lord of Creation expert. As for whether the leaders of the other 4 Tao palaces were Lord of Creation experts, he was not sure. But since they could become leaders of Tao palaces, the difference in strength would not be too great. Even if they were not Lord of Creation experts, they were at least half-step Lord of Creation experts. As for peak Lord of Creation experts, Yi Qidong knew that they might exist in the entire Xianmi heavenly region, but they were extremely rare. At least at his level, he would not be able to come into contact with them. But in the era of the 3 pure ones and the 12 ancestral shamans, there were many early Lord of Creation experts, and the 3 pure ones and the 12 ancestral shamans were all peak Lord of Creation experts. Gong was one of the 12 ancestral shamans, and Yi Qidong was indeed attracted to it. He knew that if he could take a look at Gong's corpse, it would be of great benefit to his future cultivation. Chapter 2854. Yi Qidong on the shore of the lake, Zhuowen sat cross-legged with a cup of wine in his hand. He silently listened to the discussion of Tao between the 5 freaks. To be more precise, it was the discussion of Tao between the 4 freaks. Yi Qidong was too arrogant, and he only leaned lazily against the pavilion. He didn't participate in the discussion of Tao between Ghost Plume and the others. Zhuowen listened quietly, and a look of understanding appeared in his eyes. Ghost Plume and the others indeed had a comprehension of the heavenly Tao that ordinary people couldn't reach. Although Zhuowen didn't agree with some parts of the discussion, he agreed with the remaining parts, and they also gave him quite a bit of inspiration. Apart from Ghost Plume and the others' comprehension of the heavenly Tao, what shocked Zhuowen even more was the aura that Ghost Plume and the others faintly exuded. If Zhuowen wasn't wrong, Ghost Plume, Xingjing, Xu Qinshen, and Jiang Qixing were all half-step creators, but their strength far surpassed that. The threat that these 4 gave him was even stronger than Yin Wuxie's. In other words, their strength was most likely above Yin Wuxie's. The one that Zhuowen was most likely the most wary of was Yi Qidong, who was leaning lazily against the pavilion. This Yi Qidong was definitely a prodigy. Although his cultivation was only at the early stage of the God of Creation stage, he was more powerful than Ghost Plume and the others. It was rumored that this Yi Qidong could battle with early stage creators. This was most likely not a baseless rumor. It was very likely that it was true. Brother Yi, what do you think of the Tao that we discussed? Ghost Plume was wearing a gray robe, and his face was abnormally pale. He smiled as he looked at Yi Qidong. When Ghost Plume said this, Xu Qinshen, Jiang Qixing, and Xingjing all looked at Yi Qidong. The 3 of them were also very curious as to how Yi Qidong would evaluate the Tao that they had just discussed. Yi Qidong yawned and said in a bored tone, "So, you don't have to worry about me. Just continue your discussion and treat me as air." Ghost Plume and the other 3's expressions immediately turned ugly. Xingjing was the only female among the 5. She was beautiful and had an otherworldly temperament. She was a bit angry when she saw Yi Qi-dong's uncaring attitude. "Brother Yi, are you looking down on us? Since you've been invited to this freak meet, you ought to have the obligation to share your comprehensions and experiences," Xing Jing said in a delicate voice. Yi Qi-dong slowly turned his head, a pair of long and narrow phoenix eyes staring at Xing Jing. He grinned and said, "Is junior sister Xing Jing dissatisfied with me?" Xing Jing's entire body went cold. Although Yi Qi-dong was smiling, her entire body was cold, extremely uncomfortable. Yi Qi-dong stared at Xing Jing, his gaze growing colder and colder. A terrifying aura filled the entire Blue Moon Lake. The originally calm Blue Moon Lake suddenly surged with terrifying waves, like a dragon emerging from the sea. Zhuowen's expression changed slightly. Yi Qi-dong's aura alone was so terrifying. It was like a giant mountain, suppressing the surroundings, causing many cultivators to feel a sense of suffocation. Zhuowen's gaze became very serious. Yi Qi-dong's strength was somewhat beyond his expectations. He knew very well that Yi Qi-dong could emit such a terrifying aura. If they really fought, the aura he released would be even more terrifying, and his power would be even more shocking. His heart was pounding. If he were to face Yi Qi-dong, he would be far inferior, unless his Panga's sacred body could reach the 6-star level. Xing Jing's entire body trembled, and her teeth began to chatter because Yi Qi-dong's aura was completely crushing her body. Ghost Plume saw that the atmosphere was not quite right, and hurriedly said to Yi Qi-dong, "Brother Yi, don't take it to heart. Junior sister Xing Jing has always had a straightforward personality. Just now, she accidentally said something wrong. I hope brother Yi doesn't take it to heart." Xu Qinshen and Jiang Qixing also spoke up for Xing Jing. Yi Qi-dong slowly withdrew the terrifying aura on his body and said indifferently, "Today, I came to participate in this gathering because of brother Gue Ling. If it wasn't for that matter, I, Yi Qi-dong, wouldn't have specially come to participate in your so-called Tao discussion." Yi Qi-dong was very domineering. His words showed that he did not take Ghost Plume and the others seriously. Ghost Plume and the others' expressions were not very good, but there was nothing they could do. They had seen how terrifying Yi Qi-dong was before. 100 years ago, Yi Qi-dong's cultivation level was the same as theirs, and he was also a half-step Genesis creator. He had challenged them one by one and defeated all 4 of them. Now that Yi Qi-dong had become a Genesis creator before them, his strength would only be more terrifying, and he would leave the 4 of them far behind. Although the outside world still called the 5 of them the 5 great freaks. But Gue Ling knew that even with the 4 of them added together, they were completely unable to compare to Yi Qi-dong alone. And after Yi Qi-dong became a Genesis creator, he no longer took the 4 of them seriously. As the terrifying aura retracted, Xing Jing's expression relaxed, and his gaze toward Yi Qi-dong was filled with fear and unease. Today's Tao discussion will end here. I think we've already said what we needed to say. Next, it should be the martial arts competition that I've prepared for the 4 of you. This time, because we heard that the 4 of you had come to my humble abode as guests, we were all extremely excited and gathered around to see the 4 of you. For this reason, I've specially arranged a martial arts competition as a form of entertainment for the 4 of you. At the same time, I've also taken the initiative to ask if any of my junior brothers won first place this time. I hope that the 4 of you can give some pointers. Ghost Plume smiled warmly, giving off the feeling of a spring breeze. Xing Jing, Su Qinshen, and Jiang Qixing all clasped their hands in greeting. Yi Qi-dong, on the other hand, still did as he pleased and only nodded lightly at Ghost Plume without any other expression. Ghost Plume did not care about Yi Qi-dong's attitude. He knew that a freak like Yi Qi-dong had already given him a lot of face by coming here. He naturally did not expect Yi Qi-dong to express his attitude. Ghost Plume stood up, and his gaze fell on the shores of the Blue Moon Lake as he began to narrate the details of the martial arts competition. Many of the disciples on the shores of the Blue Moon Lake already knew what was going to happen. Now that they heard Ghost Plume's introduction again, they were still overwhelmed with emotions. The martial arts competition this time was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for them. The 5 great freaks were the 5 strongest individuals of the younger generation, and their understanding of the heavenly Tao was even deeper and more shallow than most Genesis creators. If they could receive guidance from these 5 monstrous geniuses, most of the disciples present would benefit greatly. Zhuowen sat in his seat, bored to death. He was not interested in the martial arts competition that Ghost Plume had proposed. With his strength, it would be too easy for him to defeat all the other disciples apart from the 5 great freaks. Chapter 2855. Martial arts competition, however. Zhuowen was not interested in the benefits of winning first place in the martial arts competition. His comprehension of the heavenly laws was already far superior to ordinary people. Moreover, he cultivated the unprecedented Pangu's sacred body. His future was limitless, and his potential was even greater than Yi Qidong's. Zhuowen had his own pride. With his potential and strength, he did not need Ghost Plume's guidance at all. Of course, with Yi Qidong's extraordinary talent, in Zhuo Wen's eyes, he was still qualified to discuss the Tao with him as an equal. However, it was merely a discussion of the Tao as an equal. Gui Ling and the others were not qualified in Zhuo Wen's eyes. Although Zhuowen was not interested, Qiu Linglong beside him was extremely excited. Her beautiful eyes were filled with passion. Junior brother Xiaowen, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. The 5 great geniuses rarely gather together. Moreover, to be able to receive guidance from the 5 great geniuses will definitely benefit you for the rest of your life, Qiu Linglong said fervently. Zhuowen was speechless. He shook his head and said, "Senior Sister Qiu, I think that the people gathered at the Blue Moon Lake are all famous geniuses in the sect. I think it will be very difficult to stand out from them and become first place in the martial arts competition." Qiu Linglong calmed down and sighed softly. "Junior brother Xiaowen, you are right. With my strength, it is indeed very unlikely for me to become first place. However, speaking of this," Qiu Linglong's beautiful eyes burned with passion. She knew that Zhuowen was very strong. After all, even a heavenly fate master like Shun Ziping was easily defeated by the youth in front of her. Zhuowen shook his head and said, "Senior Sister Qiu, I do not plan to participate in this martial arts competition. My Tao depends on my own comprehension. I do not need anyone to guide me." Qiu Linglong was slightly stunned. Although she felt that it was a pity, she did not say anything. The martial arts competition was based on one's will. Although she wanted to participate, she was not strong enough. She would be cannon fodder if she went. Although Zhuowen was strong, he was not willing to be guided by the 5 great geniuses. Qiu Linglong felt that it was a pity, but there was nothing she could do. At this moment, Ghost Plume began to introduce the rules of the martial arts competition and the martial arts competition's day. The martial arts competition adopted a challenge system, and the venue was the Blue Moon Lake. Moreover, the challenge system was mutual. In other words, not only could the cultivator on the stage accept the challenge of the cultivator below the stage, the cultivator on the stage could even choose the cultivator below the stage as his opponent. Who's going first? Gui Ling stood up and looked at the many disciples around the Blue Moon Lake as he said calmly. As soon as Ghost Plume finished speaking, 2 figures appeared from the shore of the Blue Moon Lake and landed in the center of the lake. They looked at each other from afar, their battle intent soaring to the sky. "I am Tian Yongyuan, a disciple of the 7th elder, Gong Ziping," A round-faced cultivator cupped his fists and said with a serious expression, "I am Xia Buiyuan, a disciple of the sixth elder, Fan Jiaoliang." Opposite the round-faced cultivator was the square-faced cultivator. His gaze was cold, and he also cupped his hands toward the round-faced cultivator. After the two saluted each other, they let out a low roar and pounced on each other. Every move was fierce and terrifying. Both of them were peak heavens will lord cultivators. Because they were evenly matched in strength, the scene of their battle was rather grand and intense. It was very interesting to watch. After about 100 moves, the round-faced cultivator made a mistake, and the square-faced cultivator took advantage of it. A blow landed on the round-faced cultivator's body and sent him flying. Of course, the square-faced cultivator didn't have it easy either. His cultivation was about the same as the round-faced cultivator's, so he had to use all his strength to defeat the round-faced cultivator. At this moment, he also suffered from serious internal injuries. After the square-faced cultivator defeated the round-faced cultivator, he had the right to challenge his opponent once. Due to his serious injuries, the square-faced cultivator gave up the right to choose his opponent and the right to continue accepting challenges. He took the initiative to leave the stage. One had to admit that the square-faced cultivator was very smart. With his internal injuries, if he wanted to continue fighting, he was afraid that his injuries would worsen. Therefore, the square-faced cultivator made a wise choice. Next, 2 more cultivators rushed over from the shore. After announcing their names, they began to use their best moves to fight. Yi Qidong leaned lazily and looked at the 2 figures fighting in the center of the Blue Moon Lake with interest. Zhuowen was bored to death. He felt that this martial arts competition was very boring. Just as he was thinking about how to leave the courtyard, he saw an extremely familiar figure at the northwest corner of the Blue Moon Lake. Zhuowen narrowed his eyes and looked coldly at the figure. His expression was very unfriendly. This person was young and had a handsome face. There was a golden vertical mark between his eyebrows, and he had a unique temperament. This Sakyamuni is really not dead. He actually joined the 10 Ultimate In Corpse sect. Shuo Wen's gaze was calm. Although he had heard about the matter regarding Sakura from In Wuxia previously, he had already heard about it. But now that he saw Sakyamuni with his own eyes, it still gave him a great shock and surprise. Sakyamuni seemed to sense Zhuowen's strange gaze. He frowned and couldn't help but look at Zhuowen with a puzzled expression. Sakyamuni was unfamiliar with the young man who looked at him with a strange gaze. However, for some reason, he felt an unprecedented sense of familiarity from this unfamiliar young man, as if he had known this person for a long time. At this moment, Zhuowen had already changed his appearance and was not his original appearance. Sakyamuni was unable to recognize Zhuowen for a moment. Sakyamuni looked coldly at Zhuowen and did not pay too much attention to him. Instead, he focused all his attention on the martial arts competition in the center of the Blue Moon Lake. The guidance of the 5 monstrous geniuses was a great temptation for Sakyamuni. He also wanted to become the champion of this martial arts competition. Moreover, he was very confident in himself. He had just come out of seclusion not long ago, and his cultivation had smoothly advanced to the early stage Eternal Lord realm. His battle strength was even more terrifying. Ordinary half-step Genesis lords were no match for him. Apart from the 5 monstrous geniuses present, there was basically no one who could be Sakyamuni's opponent. His strength was extremely terrifying. Sakyamuni did not intend to go on stage so early. He knew very well that the earlier he went on stage, the more battles he would have to experience and the greater the consumption of his energy. It would be a big obstacle to his final victory. I am Shen Hongxian, a disciple of the 8th Elder Mao Xinho's lineage. Suddenly, a black-robed young man flew out from the shore and landed in the center of the Blue Moon Lake. Zhuowen's eyes narrowed the moment he saw this black-robed young man. This black-robed young man was no stranger to Zhuowen. It was this black-robed young man who had cast an unfriendly look at him as soon as he entered the courtyard. Chapter 28:56. Shen Hongshuan's provocation. It's actually Shen Hongxian? Qiu Linglong stood beside Zhuowen, her willowy brows slightly furrowed. She didn't look too good. Senior Sister Qiu, is there some kind of relationship between Shen Hongxian and Shen Ziping? Zhuowen asked Qiu Linglong. Shen Hongxian is Shen Ziping's elder brother. He's very strong and a disciple of the 8th Elder's lineage. It's said that he broke through to the Lord of Profound Secrets not long ago and is much stronger than Shen Ziping. At this point, Qiu Linglong looked at Zhua worriedly and continued, I think that after Shen Ziping was taken care of by you, he will probably complain to Shen Hongxian. Shen Hongxian should know about the matter between you and Shen Ziping. Zhuowen nodded. His expression didn't change, but he was laughing coldly in his heart. It'd be best if Shen Hongxian knew what was good for him. If he didn't, Zhuowen didn't mind taking action. Shen Hongshuan's strength was indeed impressive. His opponent was also the Lord of Profound Secrets, but Shen Hongxian had easily dealt with him. Only then did the crowd realize that Shen Hongxian was already a peak expert of the Lord of Profound Secrets. His strength was close to that of an eternal overlord and was unfathomable. After defeating his opponent, Shen Hongxian chose to challenge his opponent. He looked around the shore of Blue Moon Lake and finally stopped on Zhuowen. A cold smile tugged at his lips. You get the hell up here. Shen Hongxian pointed at Zhuowen, his words impudent and his eyes full of arrogance. Junior brother, Shen Hongxian really did come looking for you. You'd better forfeit. Otherwise, Shen Hongxian won't show you any mercy, Qiu Linglong hurriedly advised. Zhuowen smiled and gestured for Qiu Linglong not to worry. He took a step forward and landed in the center of Blue Moon Lake, facing Shen Hongxian. Many cultivators on the shore were surprised because they found that the cultivator Shen Hongxian challenged was only the Master of Destiny. Ghost Plume frowned, looking displeased. In his opinion, the winner of the challenge should at least be someone of the same cultivation level as him or higher. However, Shen Hongxian had chosen a Master of Destiny whose cultivation was one level lower than Shen Hongshuan's. However, Ghost Plume didn't explicitly mention this, so he couldn't say anything. But after Shen Hongshuan's challenge ended, Ghost Plume planned to send a voice transmission to remind Shen Hongxian. When Shen Hongxian saw that Zhuowen had really come up to him, he revealed a cruel smile and asked, Do you know who I am? Whether you're a human, a beast, or something else, what does that have to do with me? Zhuowen retorted. Shen Hongshuan's eyes flashed with anger as he looked at Zhuowen with an unfriendly expression. It seems that you still don't know my identity? Then you should remember Shen Ziping, right? You mean Shen Ziping? I just crippled a mad dog whose name is Shen Ziping. Is that mad dog your brother? Zhuowen spoke mercilessly. He knew that this Shen Hongxian was clearly looking for trouble with him. Naturally, he would not give him any face. You're courting death. I'll tell you right now, I'm Shen Ziping's elder brother. You crippled all the bones in my brother's body. You're vicious and merciless. Today, I'll let you have a taste of the pain of having all your bones broken. Shen Hongxian was unable to restrain his anger. The aura of a peak master of profound secrets suddenly erupted, and he was like a terrifying storm that swept over. Shen Hongshuan's right hand formed a palm and blasted out through the air. Terrifying energy whistled out, and a huge black seagull, appeared behind Shen Hongxian. This black seagull's shadow was extremely large. When it spread its wings, it seemed to cover the sky and the sun. Its aura was extremely powerful. The black seagull's wings suddenly flapped, and a violent hurricane swept out, wreaking havoc in all directions. The calm surface of the Blue Moon Lake was swept up in terrifying waves. Layer upon layer, they constantly surged upwards. It was as if dragons had been born, sweeping out from the depths of the lake. The terrifying waves swept out, and many cultivators on the shore of the Blue Moon Lake were deeply affected. They involuntarily retreated, distancing themselves from the shore. As for the 5 huge pavilions floating above the Blue Moon Lake, they were as immovable as mountains. The terrifying waves swept over, but they were all blocked by the mysterious energy on the surface of the pavilions. The 5 monstrous geniuses sitting upright in the 5 pavilions watched calmly as Shen Hongxian created a terrifying commotion in the Blue Moon Lake. Although the commotion created by Shen Hongxian was indeed terrifying, to the 5 of them, it was nothing more than a drizzle. It was not worth mentioning. Boom! The black seagull stretched its neck and let out a long cry. Its cry was sharp, piercing through gold and splitting stone. It rushed straight into the clouds and then swooped down, its target being Zhuowen. Zhuowen stood silently in place, his gaze as calm as water. Seeing the huge black seagull coming closer and closer, Zhuowen clenched his right hand and slowly punched out. Zhuowen's punch was ordinary, and there was no energy fluctuation at all. It was like a normal punch from an ordinary person. However, when this punch landed on the black seagull, the huge body of the black seagull froze in place. Then Zhuowen suddenly increased his strength, and the black seagull let out a blood-curdling cry, dispersing into countless black fog. The terrifying fist intent soared into the sky like a hot knife through butter and swept directly towards Shen Hongxian. Shen Hongxian was still in shock from the collapse of the black seagull. When he saw the fist intent rushing towards him, he let out a loud cry and used all his strength to block it. Unfortunately, the moment the fist intent came into contact with Shen Hongxian, its power increased by hundreds or thousands of times. Shen Hongxian's pupils shrunk to the size of needles. With a miserable shriek, he was directly sent flying by the fist intent. Waves of bloody mist continuously erupted from his body, making him look incomparably miserable. Bang! Shen Hongxian crashed into the ground, creating a rather deep crater. He was in the middle of the crater, twitching unnaturally. His body was covered in blood, and he looked like he had been subjected to some kind of inhumane torture. Ghost Plume's eyes narrowed slightly, and he looked curiously at Zhuowen, who had easily defeated Shen Hongxian. Zhuowen was a new face to him, or rather, he had never seen this person in the 10 Extremes Yin Corp sect. This made him very interested in Zhuowen. Xiuqin Shun, Xingjing, and Jiang Qixing were also moved. Their originally indifferent minds involuntarily fell on Zhuowen. Although there were examples of Master Tianming being able to defeat Master Xuanji, it was still very rare. Zhuowen didn't seem to be famous, but he had such powerful strength. It was impossible not to attract attention. Only Yi Qidong looked indifferently at Zhuowen and lost interest. He supported his head with his right hand and narrowed his eyes, as if he was daydreaming. The moment Shen Hongxian was severely injured, a blue-robed man flew out from the shore of the Blue Moon Lake and landed beside Yi Qidong. After a brief examination, his face immediately darkened. "Junior Marshal Brother, aren't you being a little too ruthless? Brother Shen was just sparring with you, but you actually crippled all his bones and tendons." The blue-robed man's voice was very cold as he looked at Zhuowen with hostility. Zhuo glanced indifferently at the blue-robed man and said, "This senior brother Shen threatened to shatter all my bones and tendons to avenge his younger brother. In order to prevent this senior brother Shen from taking revenge, I could only make the first move." Chapter 28:57. A powerful newcomer. Injuries and deaths are unavoidable in a martial arts competition. Junior brother, you don't have to take it too seriously. Ghost Plume spoke calmly. The blue-robed man's eyes flickered, but he remained silent. The organizer of this martial arts competition was Ghost Plume, so the rules were naturally set by Ghost Plume. Since Ghost Plume had spoken, he had no right to make irresponsible remarks. If this senior brother is dissatisfied or unconvinced, I welcome you to challenge me and avenge your friend, Zhuo suddenly said. The blue-robed man trembled as he looked at the smile on Zhuo's face. A chill rose from the soles of his feet and rushed to the top of his head. Then forget it. This junior brother is strong. I admit that I'm not as good as you, so I won't embarrass myself. The blue-robed man hurriedly declined. His strength was at most on par with Shen Hongxian. If he went up to fight with this person, he would probably end up like Shen Hongxian. If that's the case, then get lost. What are you still doing here? Zhuo said indifferently. The blue-robed man's ears turned red. He felt humiliated and hurriedly left the center of the Blue Moon Lake with Shen Hongxian. Zhuo did not have any pity for Shen Hongxian and the blue-robed man. These two had been very unfriendly to him. If it weren't for the rules, the two of them would have killed him already. Against such an enemy, Zhuo really had no need to show mercy. At this moment, many disciples on the shore of the Blue Moon Lake were discussing. They looked at Zhuo's figure in the center of the lake with a trace of fear in their eyes. Shen Hongxuan's strength was not the best in this batch of disciples, but he was still above average. But Shen Hongxian could not even withstand a single move in the hands of this child, and was defeated. Of course, Zhuo's unfamiliar face was also the main reason why everyone was discussing. Generally, disciples who could enter this monster genius pageant were well-known geniuses in the sect. Strength and reputation were indispensable. Most of the disciples knew each other. However, when Zhuo went up, none of the surrounding disciples recognized him. He was definitely a new face. Qiu Linglong was pleasantly surprised. Although she knew that Zhuo was very strong, she did not expect him to be so strong. Shen Hongxian was actually defeated by Zhuo in one move, which was out of her expectations. But soon, she was as excited as a newborn calf. She was truly happy for Zhuo. Gui Ling, on the other hand, was carefully sizing up Zhuo. He was a little surprised because he realized that the young man in front of him only had the aura of a destiny master. Moreover, he could not see any signs of concealing his cultivation. Ghost Plume began to make plans in his mind. He wanted to take this boy under his wing and nurture him well. In the future, he might become his right-hand man. Zhuo stood at the center of the lake, feeling somewhat helpless. He had no interest in this martial arts competition. Originally, he had planned to leave the courtyard directly, but he did not expect Shen Hongxian to take the initiative to challenge him and come to the center of the lake. Zhuo also knew the rules of this martial arts competition. The cultivator who won this martial arts competition had to stand on the arena and wait for others to challenge him. When no one dared to challenge him, he would be the winner of this martial arts competition. With Zhuo's personality, he would either not do it or not do it half-heartedly. Although he did not care for the guidance of the 5 great monsters, he could give this opportunity to Qiu Linglong. This time, he came to this monster genius pageant and learned a lot about the 5 great monsters, mainly because of Qiu Linglong. In addition, for Zhuowen, winning first place in this martial arts competition was not difficult, so now he stood in the center of the lake and did not resist as much as he did at the beginning. "I'll take you on." After a moment of silence, a rough voice sounded. A burly man in short-sleeved hemp clothes jumped out and landed in the center of the lake opposite Zhuowen. This burly man carried a long saber on his back. His arms were inhumanly thick and strong, and his face was full of whiskers. "I'm Zohan, a disciple of the sixth elder, Fan Jiaoyang. Junior brother, you haven't told me your name before, right? Can you tell me your name and let me know which master in the sect has taught you a genius like you?" The burly man spoke in a rough voice. He seemed to be forthright, but his mind was very meticulous. He wanted to find out Zhuowen's background. Zhuowen did not panic and said indifferently, "I'm Xiao Wen, a disciple that the ninth elder just accepted. I'm considered a newcomer." When Zhuowen said this, many of the disciples present were moved. Ghost Plume also revealed a look of surprise. The strength that Zhuowen displayed just now was really too strong. It was hard to imagine that someone with such strength was just a newcomer who had just been accepted. However, when they thought of Zhuowen's unfamiliar face, they felt relieved in their hearts. Zhuowen's explanation was indeed very reasonable. So it's junior brother Xiaowen. Junior brother Xiaowen, you're already so strong as a newcomer. Your future in the sect is limitless. Today, I, Zohan, will experience your strength. When the burly man finished speaking, he pulled his right hand out from behind his back and took a step forward. Gusts of black wind erupted from his body, forming a terrifying black storm. Wielding a long saber, the burly man was very fast. In an instant, he swept in front of Zhuowen. The saber in his hand quickly slashed out. Terrifying saber light flashed in the air as if it could destroy everything in the world. Zhuowen's gaze was calm. This Zohan's strength was not bad. He was much stronger than Shenhongxian. Although he was also at the peak of the profound mysteries realm, he was not far from becoming an eternal overlord. Zhuowen punched out with his bare hands. He did not use his full strength. He knew that killing Shenhongxian in one move was too shocking. It was not beneficial for him to enter the underworld hell to find the elusive underworld soul flower, so he held back this time. Zhuowen and the burly man fought hundreds of rounds. Zhuowen succeeded in one move and defeated the burly man, Zohan, out of the competition. Zohan laughed heartily. He cupped his fists at Zhuowen and said, "Junior brother Xiaowen, your strength is superb. I wholeheartedly accept my defeat." Zhuowen also cupped his fists at Zohan. He had a good impression of this person. At least he was open and above board. He dared to take responsibility for his actions and had a forthright personality. After that, Zhuowen accepted challenges from many disciples one after another. Among them, there was no lack of cultivators who were stronger than Zohan. However, Zhuowen basically did not refuse anyone. He won all of them. Moreover, because Zhuowen showed mercy in every battle, he won the favor of many of his opponents. Brother Ghost Plume, the newcomer of the 10 Extremes Corpse sect, is a little too strong. He just joined your sect not long ago, but he's already so strong. Su Chun Shen looked at Zhuowen's figure in the center of the lake and could not help but click his tongue in wonder. Ghost Plume chuckled and said, "It's also because Elder Een is lucky to have taken in such an amazing disciple." Chapter 2858. Sakyamuni makes a move. Ghost Plume smiled mysteriously and said that might not necessarily be the case. An even more extraordinary genius will be participating this time, and I think that junior brother of mine will be the true first. Jiang Qixing revealed a curious expression and said, Brother Ghost Plume, could it be that you're talking about the naughty Shiva? A genius that's been giving rise to much discussion recently in your 10 Extremes in Corpse sect. Ghost Plume roared with laughter and said, looks like I can't hide anything from Brother Jiang. Right, it's the naughty Shiva. I've heard of the naughty Shiva as well. I heard that the naughty Shiva is a genius with a heaven-rank ancestral Tao that your 10 Extremes in Corpse sect has recently obtained. Moreover, his cultivation speed is extremely swift. He's already stepped into the second step of the Tao advancement in less than a few hundred years, right? Xingjing interrupted. Just wait and see. When the four of you provide guidance to junior brother Sakyamuni, I'll explain the reason I've gathered all of you here. Ghost Plume grinned as he spoke. As soon as Ghost Plume spoke these words, no matter if it was Jiang Qixing, Xingjing, Su Chunshen, or even the lazy Yi Qidong, their eyes lit up. They had traveled thousands of miles to gather at the 10 Extremes in Corpse sect. They were not really here to discuss the Tao, unless they had nothing better to do. It was mainly because of the clues Ghost Plume had revealed to them about the place where ancestral shaman Gonggong had perished. If they were able to enter the place where such an expert had perished, then they would definitely be able to obtain unimaginable precious treasures and benefits. Ha ha, Brother Ghost Plume, you're too kind. Once junior brother Sakyamuni wins, then we'll definitely guide him without holding back. Jiang Qixing spoke in a rather carefree manner. Xingjing and Su Chunshen hurriedly expressed their goodwill as well. The originally lazy Yi Qidong's eyes flickered as he took the initiative to speak. I can also give you a few pointers. I just hope that Brother Ghost Plume's words are true. Ghost Plume laughed and hurriedly said, Brother Yi, don't worry. I can guarantee that the information I received is absolutely true. If there's even the slightest bit of falsehood, may I, Ghost Plume, be struck by lightning and die a horrible death. Yi Qidong didn't say much, only nodding. At the center of the lake, Zhuowen defeated his opponents again and again, standing tall without falling. As a result, there were fewer and fewer challengers. Until now, no one dared to challenge him as he stood at the center of the lake. Qiu Linglong was extremely excited. She had watched as Zhuowen overcame all difficulties and triumphed all the way until now. She knew that Zhuowen would definitely obtain first place in this first martial meeting. Boom! Suddenly, a sound of air being torn apart like a thunderclap flashed over, and then a young man with a grand aura flashed over from the shore. The young man's entire body radiated a violet gold light, and there was a golden vertical mark between his eyebrows that looked dignified and mysterious. Zhuowen looked at the young man in front of him. His gaze was calm, but his heart was cold and filled with killing intent. I'm Sakyamuni, a disciple of the fourth elder Ba Jingwei's line. I've come to challenge you. Sakyamuni had his hands behind his back. His bewitching eyes stared straight at Zhuowen as he continued. Your strength isn't bad. You're indeed worthy of praise for being able to defeat so many opponents. However, you'll have to stop here because I, Sakyamuni, have come to end you. If you don't want to die, I think it's best if you forfeit. Otherwise, it'll be too late for regrets. Sakyamuni was very proud. He cast a sidelong glance at Zhuowen and didn't even look Zhuowen in the eye. Zhuowen was startled at first, but then he looked at Sakyamuni with interest and said, Isn't this a martial arts competition to learn from each other? Although death is inevitable in a martial arts competition, isn't it a bit too much to deliberately kill me? Sakyamuni's gaze was arrogant. He looked coldly at Zhuowen and said, Senior Ghost Plume didn't say that I couldn't kill you. It's possible that I accidentally killed you. This is an accident. What does your accidental death have to do with me? Zhuowen smiled. At the same time, he looked at Gui Ling, who was in the pavilion not far away. Ghost Plume narrowed his eyes, as if he didn't hear the conversation between the two. Seeing Ghost Plume's expression, he knew that Ghost Plume was planning to turn a blind eye. In other words, if Sakyamuni really killed him, Ghost Plume wouldn't speak up for him. Although Zhuowen wanted to directly kill Sakyamuni, he knew that he had to make things clear. Otherwise, if he really killed Sakyamuni, there would be trouble. Thinking of this, Zhuowen cupped his fists at Ghost Plume and said in a deep voice, "Senior Ghost Plume, this Sakyamuni brother said that he wants to have a life and death battle with me. I wonder what Senior Ghost Plume thinks." Ghost Plume was startled. He didn't expect Zhuowen to ask for his opinion. He subconsciously focused his gaze on Sakyamuni. Sakyamuni was very conceited. He looked coldly at Zhuowen and said, "A life and death battle? You think too highly of yourself. You're just a new disciple. Although you have some strength, you don't have the qualifications to have a life and death battle with me." Ghost Plume's eyes flickered and said, "You can decide on this matter yourselves. The tournament is free to do as you wish. There are no rules. You don't have to be too rigid." Sakyamuni smiled. He knew that Ghost Plume's words were a tacit approval for him to kill. Sakyamuni was very confident. He knew that Ghost Plume would definitely agree. Because in addition to being the disciple of the fourth elder, Ba Jingwei, he was also Ghost Plume's junior brother. Furthermore, he also knew that Gui Ling had organized the martial arts competition of the Monstrous Genius pageant because of him. It was a stage prepared for him. There was no doubt that he would win first place. As for why Sakyamuni wanted to kill Shao when who suddenly appeared, it was mainly because he felt a familiar aura from this junior brother. This aura made him very uncomfortable. In addition, Shaowen had been in the limelight so many times in front of him. Sakyamuni was very unhappy and wanted to kill Shaowen to establish his prestige. "Thank you for your advice, Senior Brother Ghost Plume." Zhuowen cupped his fists towards Ghost Plume. He was secretly delighted. His gaze towards Sakyamuni became even more unbridled and fierce. Since Ghost Plume had said so, Zhuowen didn't restrain his killing intent and directly revealed it. Sakyamuni was the first to feel this killing intent. He was first startled, then immediately became furious. This kid really didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. He actually dared to reveal his killing intent towards him. He was simply courting death. "Junior Brother Shaowen, you're very brave," Sakyamuni said in a low voice. He kicked off with his right foot and moved as fast as lightning. The purple and gold color on his body became even more intense. Zhuowen narrowed his eyes. Only then did he see that the purple and gold color on Sakyamuni's body was a combination of black and gold energy. Zhuowen was very familiar with the gold energy. It was the special energy that Sakyamuni cultivated when he was in the 8 heavens. The black energy was full of dense yin qi, which made people's hair stand on end. It should be the cultivation technique that Sakyamuni cultivated after joining the 10 Extremes Yin Corp sect. Chapter 2859. The fierce battle bang. As the fist and palm collided, a terrifying shockwave spread out. The entire space seemed to have been frozen by this shockwave. The Blue Moon Lake exploded with an even more terrifying commotion. It was as if it had been hollowed out as it continued to churn. Many disciples on the shore of the Blue Moon Lake narrowed their eyes and retreated, watching the great battle in the Blue Moon Lake in fear. Sakyamuni is so powerful. He's already become an eternal overlord. Judging by his battle prowess, I'm afraid he's no weaker than an ordinary creator. Sakyamuni is worthy of being called a once-in-a-lifetime genius in our 10 Extremities Yin Corp sect. He's only joined our sect for a short while, but he's already so strong. Other than Senior Brother Ghost Plume, who else in the younger generation of the 10 Extremities Yin Corp sect can be his match? On the shore, many disciples discussed animatedly. They were shocked by the terrifying power Sakyamuni had displayed. At the same time, many disciples were also shocked by the newcomer named Shaowen. She had not only withstood Sakyamuni's fierce attacks, but also showed no signs of defeat. Your sex Sakyamuni is indeed worthy of his reputation. His battle prowess is indeed terrifying. I can't believe he's reached such a level. In the pavilion, Xing Jing clicked her tongue in amazement, her beautiful eyes filled with amazement. But this newcomer isn't weak either. I think Sakyamuni won't be able to take him down in a short time. He's really the strongest newcomer I've ever seen, Jiang Qixing said. Bang! 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 The shock waves from the battle between Zhuowen and Sakyamuni grew stronger and stronger. The energy erupting from their palms and fists seemed to be able to split the heavens and earth. It was extremely terrifying. A powerful restriction had been set up around the Blue Moon Lake, but this restriction trembled violently under the increasingly fierce shockwaves of their battle, as if it would collapse at any moment. Ghost Plume's eyes flashed. With a wave of his sleeve, he brought the 5 pavilions out of the Blue Moon Lake. He formed a seal with both hands, and the huge blue moon above the lake emitted an even more terrifying blue light. In the instant that the blue light intensified, the restrictions around the Blue Moon Lake also became much more tenacious and powerful. The originally shaky situation also slowed down a lot. Bang! Above the Blue Moon Lake, Sakyamuni and Zhuowen separated as soon as they clashed. Both rejoiced and looked at each other from a distance. Zhuowen's gaze was as calm as water, while Sakura was filled with shock. His heart was not calm at all. Indra was well aware of his strength. Although his cultivation base was only at the early stage Eternal Lord realm, because of his physique and cultivation method, the 10 ruthless 10 absolutes, he was extremely powerful, enough to fight against a creator. In the same rank, there was basically no one who was his match. But this newcomer's cultivation was lower than his. He was only a Heaven's Mandate Lord, but he'd managed to fight him without losing. This shocked him greatly. Zhuowen looked at Sakyamuni quietly. Although he'd fought Sakyamuni before, after leaving the 8 heavens, his cultivation method and fighting style had changed too much. This time, he knew that Sakyamuni really couldn't recognize him as Zhuowen. Senior Brother Indra, earlier when you threatened to kill me, your tone was so tyrannical that it scared me to death. But from the looks of it now, it seems that you were merely boasting earlier. Zhuowen spoke, his tone filled with ridicule. Sakyamuni's expression was ugly. He looked coldly at Zhuowen and said, "You're courting death. I won't hold back. I'll finish you off in one move." With that, Sakyamuni stomped his right foot into the air. A circular wave of air spread out, and he shot out like a bolt of lightning toward Zhuowen. Purplish gold energy revolved around Sakyamuni's body. The moment Sakyamuni arrived in front of Zhuowen, the purplish gold energy suddenly exploded and dissipated, turning into 9 purplish gold giants. The 9 purplish gold giants roared and surrounded Zhuowen. They waved their enormous fists, and all of them charged toward Zhuowen. At the same time, Sakyamuni bit the tip of his tongue and spat out a mouthful of essence blood. The purplish gold energy around him reached a new level, like a terrifying torrent that enveloped the sky and earth, forming a terrifying purplish gold barrier. Bang, bang, bang. The attacks of the 9 purplish gold giants also came crashing down on Zhuowen. Their fists surged, setting off a terrifying purplish gold wave. Sakyamuni stood on the shoulder of the tallest purplish gold giant, looking down at the tiny figure that was completely engulfed by the 9 attacks, and a mocking smile appeared on his face. "Looks like it's all over." Sakyamuni stood quietly on the purplish gold giant's shoulder and muttered to himself. For once, his eyes relaxed a little. He had to admit that Zhuowen's combat strength was very strong, and even he was wary of him. However, he also knew that his final move was even more terrifying. No matter how strong Xiaowen was, he didn't believe that she could withstand his all-out attack. Ghost Plume stood up and looked at the battle at the Blue Moon Lake with admiration and a trace of pity in his eyes. He felt that both Sakyamuni and Xiaowen were geniuses, but relatively speaking, Ghost Plume admired Sakyamuni more. He had originally planned to rope in Xiaowen to become his right-hand man, but now it seemed that his plan was going to be ruined. After all, he didn't think that Xiaowen could survive Sakyamuni's all-out attack. It looks like the outcome of the final battle has been decided. Ghost Plume coughed lightly and announced, "I hereby announce that the champion of the tournament is Sakyamuni." Before Ghost Plume could finish his words, a wave of millions of feet high suddenly rose from the Blue Moon Lake and rushed straight into the sky, almost washing away the blue moon hanging high in the sky. The 9 purplish-gold giants that were originally hovering on the surface of the Blue Moon Lake roared, and their expressions were ferocious. Then they all collapsed, and even the purplish-gold barrier around them was shattered. A figure that looked like a god or a demon suddenly rushed out from the depths of the Blue Moon Lake, causing a terrifying wave to rise. In this figure's hand was a sharp and powerful blade of light. This blade of light was as tall as a person, and it emitted a blazing light and a terrifying pressure. This person was Zhuowen, and the blade of light in his hand was the sky-splitting blade. Since Zhuowen's Panga sacred body had advanced to 5 stars, the power of the Panga banner's profound meaning had become more and more powerful. This sky-splitting blade originally only covered the surface of Zhuowen's hand blade with a thin layer, but now this sky-splitting blade had naturally formed a huge blade of light, as if it was a real blade. Its power was many times stronger than before. The 9 purplish-gold giants were destroyed by this sky-splitting blade one by one. Sakyamuni staggered. After the purplish-gold giants collapsed, he almost fell. Fortunately, he reacted in time and broke away from the purplish-gold giants, leaving in advance. Whoosh! Zhuowen's eyes were cold, and the corner of his mouth revealed a cold smile. He held the sky-splitting blade in his right hand and suddenly threw it. Suddenly, the blade of light cut through the void and blasted toward Sakyamuni. Chapter 2860. Annihilation Pucci. The sky-splitting blade pierced through Sakyamuni's chest, its terrifying sharpness tearing apart the right side of Sakyamuni's chest along with his shoulder. Blood spurted out like a bloody mist. Sakyamuni's eyes widened in anger as he screamed. Nearly a third of his body had been torn apart, almost annihilated. Even Sakyamuni couldn't bear the intense pain. He roared madly. Sakyamuni was horrified, his eyes wide open, but he still had some consciousness left. He circulated all the energy in his body and retreated in the direction of Ghost Plume's pavilion. In the instant that the sky-splitting blade pierced his body, he had already deeply felt the terrifying killing intent of Zhuo when crushing down on him. Sakyamuni was terrified. He knew that this junior brother Xiao wanted to kill him. If he didn't retreat now, this person's next attack would completely annihilate him. Sure enough, the moment he retreated, a terrifying gale swept past where he had been, tearing apart space and exploding energy. Sakyamuni was indeed smart. The moment he was defeated, he decisively retreated in the direction of Ghost Plume. He knew very well that this newcomer called Xiaowen was terrifyingly strong, even stronger than him. Among those present, only an expert of Ghost Plume's level could stop this newcomer. Sakyamuni's mind was filled with a myriad of thoughts. He somewhat regretted his arrogant words from before. He had no enmity with this newcomer, and they didn't even know each other. Just because he didn't like this newcomer, he declared that he would kill him, forcibly raising the martial arts competition to the level of a death match. He had already boasted that he would kill this kid. Since this kid was stronger than him, Killing him in return was within the bounds of what he could do. The killing intent in Zhuowen's eyes was almost tangible. He saw that Sakyamuni had decisively dodged his fatal attack. He coldly snorted in his heart and continued to chase after Sakyamuni. However, he quickly sensed that something was wrong. He saw that Sakyamuni was retreating in the direction of Ghost Plume. He also noticed that Ghost Plume was moving the pavilion closer to Sakyamuni. Zhuowen's gaze was gloomy. He knew that Ghost Plume intended to save Sakyamuni. From the moment Ghost Plume agreed to let Sakyamuni kill him, he knew that Sakyamuni's relationship with Ghost Plume wasn't shallow. But he didn't expect that Ghost would still side with Sakyamuni at such a time. Zhuowen had to kill this Sakra. Even if Gui Ling wanted to save the Sakra, it was impossible. Thinking of this, Zhuowen pointed with his right finger. The power of space-time burst out from his fingertip. With him as the center, a space-time river appeared. A purple sun rose from the space-time river and hung high in the sky. It was suffused with mysterious energy. Ever since Zhuowen's space-time divine ability was fused with the energy of Tao intent, its power had greatly increased. Moreover, as Zhuowen's strength continued to increase, the power of his space-time divine ability also increased with each passing day. Sakyamuni, who was still retreating, was caught off guard and was swept into the space-time river. His speed of retreat suddenly became extremely slow. Sakyamuni knew that things weren't looking good. He immediately saw the purple sun rising high in the sky. His eyes were filled with shock as he thought of something. "You are," Sakyamuni thought of a person. He looked at the youth in front of him in disbelief. "It's me." Zhuowen's eyes were cold. His speed increased explosively. Stepping on the purple waves, he appeared in front of Sakyamuni in an instant. His right fist punched out and quickly landed between Sakyamuni's eyebrows. "Stop!" Ghost Plume's expression changed slightly. With a wave of his sleeve, he immediately rushed out of the pavilion and rushed toward Zhuowen. At the same time, he shouted to stop Zhuowen's current actions. All the hair on Zhuowen's body stood on end as he felt the powerful aura coming from Gui Ling. His heart sank, but his right fist didn't stop at all as it went straight into the heart of Sakra's brows. Rumble! The terrifying fist energy exploded, and Sakra let out a blood-curdling scream. His head exploded, and his wretched body collapsed with a loud bang, turning into a bloody mist. After completely destroying Sakyamuni's physical body, Zhuowen waved his right hand and completely collected Sakyamuni's soul. Zhuowen felt that Sakyamuni's soul was not ordinary. He had clearly destroyed Sakyamuni's soul back then. Logically speaking, Sakyamuni should have died without any chance of resurrection. However, Sakyamuni didn't die. Moreover, it seemed that this guy's Tao foundation had evolved. His cultivation had improved rapidly, and he had become a genius disciple of the 10 Ultimates In-Corp sect. Therefore, when he killed Sakyamuni, he didn't completely destroy his soul. Instead, he secretly collected his soul and planned to study it when he returned. The secret to Sakyamuni's immortality must be in his soul. After Zhuowen quickly collected Sakyamuni's soul, a fierce attack swept over and blasted toward Zhuowen's head. Zhuowen's expression changed slightly. He clenched his right hand into a fist and violently punched out, colliding with the fierce attack. A terrifying gust of wind swept out. Zhuowen only felt a terrifying surge of energy pouring down from his arm and into the depths of his body. With a muffled groan, Zhuowen spat out a mouthful of blood and retreated. He looked gravely at Ghost Plume, who had appeared beside Sakyamuni's corpse. Ghost Plume's expression was very ugly because he realized that Sakyamuni's soul was no longer there. Of course, he didn't see Zhuowen collecting Sakyamuni's soul. He only thought that Sakyamuni's soul had been completely destroyed and that he had completely died. At this moment, the surroundings of the Blue Moon Lake were completely silent. All the disciples gathered at the Blue Moon Lake stared blankly at this scene. Sakyamana's reputation was too great in the 10 Extremes Incorp sect. He was once known as the second Ghost Plume. This meant that with Sakyamana's peerless talent, he would definitely be able to reach the level of Ghost Plume in the future. All the young disciples in the sect did not doubt that Sakyamuni would be able to reach this level in the future. Even though Zhuowen's combat strength was terrifying at the beginning when Sakyamuni attacked, most of the disciples thought that Sakyamuni would win this competition. This was because Sakyamuni's reputation in the sect was too great, almost to the point of being a legend. But now, Sakyamuni had been killed by Zhuowen in front of everyone's eyes. No one could fully react. Qiu Linglong, who was in the corner by the shore, turned pale. She also didn't think that Zhuowen would really kill Sakyamuni. Junior brother Xiao Wen was too impulsive. How could he kill Sakyamuni? This is going to be troublesome. Qiu Linglong didn't feel the slightest joy of Zhuowen's victory. Instead, she was filled with worry and fear. Not only did Sakyamuni have a good relationship with Ghost Plume, but he was also the favorite disciple of the fourth elder, Ba Jingwei. He had even been praised by the sect master, Senki Yin. Chapter 2861. Intervene, junior brother Xiao Wen, don't you think you've gone too far? Ghost Plume's eyes were gloomy. He put away Sakyamuni's body and looked at Zhuowen with an unfriendly gaze. The killing intent in his eyes was merciless and targeted at Zhuowen. Senior brother Ghost Plume, I think you've misunderstood something. Sakyamuni said from the beginning that he would kill me directly. I also told him that according to his logic, I can kill him in return. He didn't object. Since we've already said it from the beginning, this competition is equivalent to a life and death battle. Isn't it normal for there to be casualties? Zhuowen steadied his body and looked coldly at Ghost Plume. At this moment, Zukinshen, Xingjing, and Jiang Qixing were all looking at Zhuowen and Ghost Plume with interest. They all knew that Nadi Shiva was Ghost Plume's default number 1 in this tournament, and had already agreed to let them guide Sakyamuni. Not long after, Sakyamuni was killed by this newcomer, which was a ruthless slap to Ghost Plume's face. Yi Qixing, who had been lazily leaning on the table, also became interested in Zhuowen. This was especially true when Zhuowen used the sky-splitting blade. The aura emitted by the sky-splitting blade made him feel an inexplicable pressure. Even though this feeling was very small, he knew very well that it was because Zhuowen's cultivation wasn't high. If Zhuowen's cultivation was the same as his, then the might of that blade of light would probably reach a level that even he didn't dare underestimate. Didn't I tell you to stop? You ignored my words and still killed junior brother Shirtian. Are you looking down on me? Ghost Plume said coldly. Senior brother Ghost Plume, you called out too late. At that time, my attack was like an arrow on a bowstring. I had no choice but to release it. If you had stopped me earlier, I might have been able to stop. Zhuowen shook his head. Ghost Plume's eyes were filled with hostility. He was sure that Zhuowen was lying. He must have wanted to kill Sakyamuni on purpose, but he didn't listen to him at all. However, there was nothing he could do. After all, Sakyamuni was already dead. And this Zhuowen was also a disciple of the 10 Extreme Incorp sect. As the number 1 prodigy of the 10 Extreme Incorp sect, he could not bring himself to bully the weak. Since you didn't do it on purpose, I won't argue with you anymore. However, junior brother Shirtian can't die in vain. Since you killed him, you should receive a certain punishment. As Ghost Plume spoke, he took out a pale yellow scroll from his sleeve and handed it to Zhuowen, continuing, "This is a master-slave contract. Junior brother Shirtian has a very good relationship with me, so I need to give him an explanation. Please sign this contract." Zhuowen took the scroll and scanned it with his divine sense. His eyes turned cold. The conditions on this scroll were extremely harsh. As long as he signed this scroll, he would be a slave to Ghost Plume for the rest of his life. His life and death would be at the mercy of Ghost Plume. Nothing could defy Ghost Plume. Zhuowen looked at Ghost Plume quietly and said, "Senior brother Ghost Plume, this contract is too harsh. I'm afraid I can't accept it." Ghost Plume smiled and said, "Junior brother Xiaowen, you must sign this contract. If you don't, I'm afraid it will be difficult for you to leave the 10 Extreme Incorp's sect alive." You probably don't know Junior brother Shirtian's status in the sect. He is the only disciple of the fourth elder, Ba Jingwei. Moreover, the sect master has said that when Junior brother Shirtian reaches the third step of the Dao confirmation realm, he is willing to give Junior brother Shirtian some pointers. Perhaps the sect master will turn a blind eye. However, according to my research of Elder Ba's character, he will definitely not let you off. Even if you are Elder Yin's disciple, you will still not be able to stop Elder Ba. Senior brother Ghost Plume means that you are the only one who can protect me now. Zhuowen asked with a smile. Ghost Plume nodded and said, "That's right. Currently, in the 10 Extreme Incorp sect, only I can protect you. This is your only choice. I think Junior brother Xiaowen is a smart person and knows what to choose." Zhuowen returned the scroll to Ghost Plume and said with a smile, "Senior brother Ghost Plume, I appreciate your kindness. As for Elder Ba, I will deal with it myself. There is no need to trouble Senior brother Xiaowen." Ghost Plume put away the scroll that Zhuowen handed back with a gloomy face. A terrifying aura suddenly erupted and crushed toward Zhuowen. "Junior brother Xiaowen, are you sure you have thought it through?" Ghost Plume's tone became unfriendly and even a little forceful. He deliberately released his aura to intimidate Zhuowen. "Of course I have," Zhuowen said calmly. "Good, good, good." Gui Ling said, "Good," 3 times in a row. The aura he released had reached an unprecedented level of terror, pressuring Zhuowen. If it were an ordinary master of destiny, they would have knelt on the ground and been seriously injured by this aura. However, although Zhuowen felt a little pressure, it was not particularly serious. After all, he had the Pangu's sacred body. Ghost Plume's aura was not enough to affect him. Ghost Plume also noticed that Zhuowen was not intimidated by his aura. He was slightly annoyed. He reached out his right hand and grabbed Zhuowen's shoulder, wanting to make him kneel in front of him. Zhuowen's pupils shrank. He did not expect Ghost Plume to be so shameless and attack him. However, Ghost Plume's expression changed the moment he attacked. His muscles tensed up, and he immediately retreated a few hundred steps. He looked gloomily at a pavilion not far from Zhuowen. Zhuowen also noticed that an ordinary cup had unknowingly appeared at the spot where Gui Ling had originally been. Coincidentally, the direction in which the cup came from was the pavilion that Gui Ling was looking at. Zhuowen noticed that a lazy man was leaning against the pavilion. He was no stranger to this lazy man. It was the number 1 genius, Yi Qidong. "Brother Yi, what is the meaning of this?" "I'm teaching my junior brother a lesson. Are you going to meddle in other people's business?" Ghost Plume said in a deep voice. Yi Qidong lazily raised the wine cup in his hand and drank it in one gulp. He looked at Ghost Plume with his long and narrow eyes and said leisurely, "Brother Ghost Plume, I don't think what your junior brother did violated the rules of the tournament. How about this? Let's drink together and forget about our enmity with a smile." "Thank you, Brother Yi." Zhuowen was very smart. He knew that Yi Qidong wanted to help him, so he quickly agreed. Although he did not know why Yi Qidong wanted to help him, he had helped him after all. He had to express his stance. Ghost Plume was helpless. Since Yi Qidong had spoken, he had to give the latter face. After Ghost Plume withdrew his aura, he coldly said to Zhuowen, "Brother Ye's gift of wine is a great honor for you. Why don't you hurry up and toast him? Brother Ghost Plume's status is high. I think it's better for Brother Ghost Plume to scram first. I'll slowly follow behind you," Zhuowen mocked. Chapter 2862. Sakyamuni Divine. Soul Ghost Plume looked coldly at Zhuowen, no longer arguing with him, and headed towards Yi Qidong, with Zhuowen following behind. Ghost Plume and Zhuowen landed in Yi Qidong's pavilion, and two beautiful maids immediately poured wine for Zhuowen and Ghost Plume considerately. "Brother Yi, you can't leave us out." Xu Qinshen, Xing Jing, and Jiang Qixing came uninvited and landed in Yi Qidong's pavilion, each asking for a cup of wine to drink. Yi Qidong toasted everyone, then looked at Ghost Plume and said, "Brother Ghost Plume, this child is much more talented than the Nadi Shiva, and he's so strong. Your Een Corpse sect is lucky to have received such a good disciple. Although the Nadi Shiva is dead, I feel that Brother Ghost Plume should be happy. After all, you found a genius stronger than Sakyamuni." Xu Qinshen, Xing Jing, and Jiang Qixing didn't say anything after Yi Qidong spoke. Their eyelids drooped as if they were mute. Ghost Plume frowned slightly, but he could only nod. He was too afraid of Yi Qidong and didn't dare to refute him. Zhuowen silently drank his wine, wondering what Yi Qidong's goal was to help him. He could see that Yi Qidong was a person with a strong goal. If he didn't have a goal, he would rarely take the initiative to do something. Yi Qidong definitely had his own reasons for helping him, but Zhuowen couldn't figure out why Yi Qidong would help him. After 3 rounds of wine, Yi Qidong suddenly looked at Zhuowen and said, "Brother Wen, I think you should know me, so I won't introduce myself." "Senior brother, Yi is too polite." Zhuowen said, "I saw the blade of light you used just now. It was very powerful, but I've never heard of it before. I wonder what kind of Tao technique it is to have such great power." Yi Qidong's gaze flickered as he asked. When Yi Qidong said this, Ghost Plume and the others also looked at Zhuowen. The move Zhuowen used just now was indeed brilliant, and they knew that it was definitely not an ordinary Tao technique. "Senior brother Yi, you must be joking. That's a secret technique that I obtained by chance. It's not worth mentioning." Zhuowen chuckled. "I see." Yi Qidong nodded and didn't say much, continuing to drink. At this time, Zhuowen's communication jade talisman rang out. He glanced at it and then clasped his fists towards Yi Qidong and the others, saying, "Senior brothers, my master has called me back for some matters, so I won't be staying for long. There's also the prize for the first place of the martial competition. I'll give it to junior sister Qiu Linglong. I think that senior brother Ghost Plume is a man of his words. You won't go back on your word, right?" Zhuowen couldn't help but glance at Ghost Plume. The latter coldly snorted and said, "Don't worry, I naturally won't refuse the prize for the first place of the martial competition. Since you've given it to someone else, bring that person over." Zhuowen nodded and rushed out of the pavilion, arriving at the shore where Qiu Linglong was. "Junior brother Xiaowen, you're in big trouble. The Nadi Shiva is very famous in the sect, and his background is even more powerful. You killed him, I'm afraid." Qiu Linglong sighed. Zhuowen grinned and said, "I'll deal with this matter. Senior sister Qiu, my master has called me back for some matters. I'm afraid I won't have time to enjoy the prize for the first place of the martial competition, so I'll give it to you. I'll take you to Yi Qidong's pavilion now." With that, Zhuowen waved his sleeve and brought Qiu Linglong to Yi Qidong's pavilion. After exchanging a few more pleasantries, he bid farewell and left. After returning to Een Wuxia's cave, Zhuowen found a cultivator standing at the entrance of Een Wuxia's cave. This cultivator was none other than In Wuxia. When In Wuxia saw Zhuowen coming over, he hurriedly greeted him in surprise and said respectfully, "Master, why didn't you wait for me inside the cave?" "I saw an acquaintance just now, so I went out to take a look. I've only just returned." "Have you taken care of the matter?" Zhuowen said calmly. In Wuxia didn't ask any more questions and hurriedly nodded and said, "It's indeed taken care of. I can arrange for you to enter the Umbra Hell tonight as a Umbra patroller." Zhuowen nodded and said, "Then help me get in tonight. Also, I killed someone in the sect just now, so I might need you to clean up my mess." In Wuxia didn't mind and said, "Many disciples of the 10 Extremes In Corpse sect die every day because of sparring. This is very normal. I don't know who Master killed, but I'll help you take care of it." Chapter 2863. Ghost Plume's Plans. "Tell me, how did you come back from the dead?" Zhuowen stopped attacking and looked at Sakyamuni calmly. Sakyamuni's eyes were filled with fear. He pondered for a moment, then said, "I obtained a reincarnation talisman. I placed a strand of my divine soul in the reincarnation talisman and had a chance to reincarnate. When you killed me, the reincarnation talisman was activated, so I had a chance to come back to life. But that was the only chance." Sakyamuni looked at Zhuowen as he spoke. "It's that simple." Zhuowen looked at Sakyamuni in surprise. He had heard of the reincarnation talisman before, but it was extremely rare. Its value was comparable to a Genesis divine medicine. He didn't expect Sakyamuni to obtain such a precious talisman when he was in the 8 heavens. He had to admit that Sakyamuni was very lucky. Sakyamuni saw Zhuowen fall silent and felt a little nervous. He whispered, "Zhuowen, I've already told you how I came back to life. You know my position in the 10 Extremes In Corpse sect, and my master, Ba Jingwei, is a vengeful master. His strength is unfathomable, and he is a creator." Before Sakyamuni could finish, he was struck by a bolt of divine lightning. He screamed in pain, and white smoke rose from the surface of his divine soul. "Are you threatening me?" Zhuowen asked calmly. "No, I'm not threatening you. I'm just analyzing the current situation for you. If you let me go, I can let bygones be bygones. If you keep this a secret, my master won't make trouble for you." But Sakyamuni hurriedly explained, but he was met with another bolt of lightning and another scream. "Zhuowen, are you really going to kill me?" Sakyamuni roared, his voice full of anger. He had lost his mind, and his divine soul emitted a powerful light. He rushed toward Zhuowen like a madman. "You're courting death." Zhuowen's eyes were filled with murderous intent. His right hand formed a claw and slammed down. The terrifying divine thunder was like a prison, enveloping Sakyamuni, who wanted to fight to the death. With a shrill scream, Sakyamuni's spiritual soul was completely annihilated by the terrifying lightning. He couldn't be more dead. After destroying Sakyamuni's soul, Zhuowen frowned slightly. He felt that Sakyamuni's soul was behaving strangely. This guy was clearly in the state of a divine soul and had no combat power at all, but he suddenly attacked Zhuowen. It was as if he couldn't wait for Zhuowen to kill him. Zhuowen couldn't help but shake his head at this conjecture. He felt that he was overthinking. Sakyamuni must have really lost his mind, which was why he did such a crazy thing. Zhuowen wanted to ask how Sakyamuni's Tao root had evolved, but unfortunately, he didn't have the chance now. This Sakyamuni was too crazy, so he could only kill him. There's still some time before nightfall. I'll wait a little longer. Zhuowen sighed softly. He sat down cross-legged and began to quietly wait for night to fall. "Brother Ghost Plume, it's settled then. We'll take our leave first. See you in half a year." On the Blue Moon Lake, Zukinshin was full of smiles. He cupped his hands at Ghost Plume, then cupped his hands at Xingjing, Yi Qidong, and Jiang Qixing before leaving. After Zuk and Shun left, Xingjing and Jiang Qixing bid farewell, and left as well. Their faces were filled with excitement, as if they'd obtained some sort of precious treasure. Yi Qidong didn't return. Instead, he glanced indifferently at Ghost Plume and suddenly said, "The place where the ancestral shaman fell is of great importance. I'm sure Brother Ghost Plume has already informed the sect master of the 10 Extremes in Corpse sect." Ghost Plume wasn't surprised. He smiled at Yi Qidong and said, "Brother Yi, the place where the ancestral shaman Gong fell is too dangerous. It's an unknown place. Our sect master naturally knows about it. However, our sect master has considered everything thoroughly. He knows that great opportunities are often accompanied by great risks. Our 10 Extremes in Corpse sect really wants this great opportunity, but we're also afraid of the great risks involved." Yi Qidong sneered and said, "So your 10 Extremes in Corpse sect wants to share the risk? I think that after today, the place where the ancestral shaman Gong fell will be known by all the major forces of the host region." Ghost Plume cackled and said, "Brother Yi, you're underestimating our sect master's boldness. Haven't you noticed that the attacks of the foreign races on the astral battlefield have become even fiercer recently?" Yi Qidong's expression was cold and said, "You've even spread the news to the foreign races of the primitive heaven domain?" Ghost Plume laughed and said, "Not only the foreign races, but the other forces of the 3 precepts will also send people. Brother Yi, don't worry. You already know where Gong fell. It's in the astral battlefield, but only our sect master knows the exact location." "You're crazy. You're playing with fire." Yi Qidong frowned, his expression cold. Ghost Plume smiled and said, "Brother Yi, you'll know in half a year whether we're playing with fire or not." Yi Qidong regained his composure and nodded to Ghost Plume, saying, "In that case, we'll meet in half a year." With that, Yi Qidong stomped his right foot and left the Blue Moon Lake. Ghost Plume put his hands behind his back and looked at Yi Qidong's departing figure with a strange look in his eyes. He said in a low voice, "The astral battlefield, where Gong fell. I'll kick you off your pedestal. It's time for the position of the #1 genius to change." With that, Ghost Plume returned to the pavilion, and the cultivators around the Blue Moon Lake all left the courtyard. Even Xiu Linglong was sent out by Ghost Plume. Ghost Plume opened the restriction of the pavilion, then flicked his finger and took out Sakyamana's corpse from the small world. Originally, half of the chest of Sakra's corpse had been blown apart by Zhu Wen's sky-splitting blade, but now it had actually completely recovered, apart from the blood-stained remains of his clothes, which showed that Sakyamuni had gone through an extremely cruel battle. There was nothing else that could be seen. Junior brother Sakyamuni is indeed not an ordinary person. He recovered from such a terrifying injury, but his soul is empty. Could it be that Xiaowen took it away? Ghost Plume thought of a possibility, and his expression turned ugly. He was about to put away Sakyamana's corpse and head to Yin Wuxia's cave to find Xiao when the originally motionless Sakyamuni suddenly moved. The vertical slit between Sakyamana's eyebrows suddenly opened, revealing a golden pupil. The light it emitted was so intense that even Ghost Plume's expression changed drastically, and he quickly retreated. Chapter 2864. Dark Underworld. Junior brother Shirtian, you've finally resurrected. Ghost Plume let out a sigh of relief. He had some understanding of Sakyamana's physique. He had heard the sect master mention it before, so he knew that Sakyamana's physique was extraordinary. He could revive with just a drop of blood or borrow a soul to revive. Although Ghost Plume had never seen or heard of such a physique, he had never doubted Senki Yin's words. "Zhuowen, that son of a bitch, it's actually him." Sakyamana's gaze was cold, and his tone was filled with anger. Soon after, Sakyamuni saw Ghost Plume and calmed down a little. Ghost Plume then asked, Zhuowen? The Zhuowen, that junior brother Shirtian mentioned, could it be the Pill Array, Immortal Alliance's newly appointed Immortal Master Zhuowen? Sakyamuni sighed and nodded. At the same time, he told Ghost Plume about his grudge with Zhuowen, as well as the truth that Xiaowen was Zhuowen. And that Xiaowen is that Zhuowen? Since he's an immortal master of the Pill Array Immortal Alliance, why did he come to our 10 Extremities Incorp sect? Ghost Plume frowned. Senior brother Ghost Plume, I heard from the sect master that the Pill Array Immortal Alliance's alliance head, Ji Wuming, had come to ask for the elusive underworld soul flower, but the sect master didn't give it to him. Afterward, Ji Wuming settled for the next best thing, and only asked for a spot to enter the dark underworld. Sakyamuni suddenly said, You're saying that Zhuowen wants to enter the dark underworld soul flower to find it? But why did he pretend to be Yin Wuxia's disciple? And Yin Wuxia has guts. Ghost Plume frowned. He suddenly thought of something, and his gaze turned hostile. I'm afraid that Yin Wuxia wants to help Zhuowen get a position as a patrolling soldier in the underworld hell. Then, after obtaining the realm-eluding underworld soul flower, he will leave the underworld hell and immediately leave the 10 Extremes Incorp sect. Sakyamuni also reacted. Let's go. Follow me to Yin Wuxia's cave residence. Although Yin Wuxia is an elder of the sect, abusing the law for personal gain and helping an outsider is simply courting death. Ghost Plume brought Sakyamuni out of the pavilion and headed for Yin Wuxia's cave residence. At this moment, the sun had already set. Yin Wuxia walked out of the cave and brought Zhuowen towards the underworld hell. The dark underworld was located in a sinister valley beside the 10 Extremities Incorp sect. This valley was extremely vast, and it was filled with terrifying yin qi. It was dark and deep, as if it was a terrifying hell. This was the dark underworld valley, a naturally formed and terrifying place. The 10 Extremities Incorp sect was established here because of this dark underworld valley. After the tireless efforts of many generations of sect masters, they finally established the famous dark underworld hell in the dark underworld valley. It could be said that a part of the 10 Extremities Incorp sect's reputation was due to the dark underworld valley. The dark underworld valley security was extremely tight. Teams of fully armed patrolling cultivators could often be seen patrolling the surroundings. Moreover, there were restrictions set up here that emitted waves of energy. It was extremely dazzling to look at, and one could tell at a glance that this was not a good place. Yin Wuxia brought Zhuowen to a remote open space. At this moment, there was a withered old man standing in the open space. Elder Shur, this is a new patrolling soldier. Please arrange a position for him to patrol the dark underworld hell. Yin Wuxia said to the withered old man. The withered old man was expressionless. He glanced at Zhuowen indifferently and waved his hand casually at Yin Wuxia. I understand. You can leave now. I understand the principle of taking someone's money to solve a problem for them. Yin Wuxia whispered a few words to Zhuowen before leaving the dark underworld valley. Ever since Yin Wuxia left, the withered old man lowered his head and looked at a rather large bamboo scroll. It was as if he was completely mesmerized and treated Zhuowen as air. Zhuowen did not feel awkward. Instead, he casually found a rock wall and leaned against it, waiting for the withered old man. Finally, the withered old man put down the bamboo scroll and looked at the sky. Then he pressed on the rock wall behind him, and a deep passage appeared on the rock wall. Come with me. After saying this, the withered old man directly entered the passage, not caring whether Zhuowen followed him or not. The passage was filled with a misty gray fog that obscured one's vision. It was eerie. Zhuo unhurriedly followed behind the withered old man, while his divine sense silently extended out. He strangely discovered that what his divine sense probed was actually an expanse of darkness. It seems that this place naturally suppresses divine sense. That's why my divine sense is covered in darkness. Zhuo guessed. About an hour later, the old man leading the way stopped and fiddled with the rock wall in front of him. Then there was the sound of a mechanism moving. The rock wall slowly opened, revealing a gray world behind it. A gloomy and deathly aura suddenly hit him in the face. Zhuowen's face changed slightly, and his eyes became cautious. This is the patrol's token. You can freely travel through the dark underworld without worrying about being attacked by the same patrol. Also, you must remember that if you can find something good in the dark underworld hell, remember to use this token to record the aura of that thing. Otherwise, it will trigger the restriction of the dark underworld hell. After leaving the dark underworld hell, you can go to the contribution hall to exchange points or treasures. However, you are not allowed to embezzle them. Otherwise, the consequences will be severe. Remember this. Don't be greedy. Only then can you get to the end. Otherwise, your fate will be no different from those foreign cultivators. The withered old man turned around and looked indifferently at Zhuo. His voice was as cold as a machine's. Zhuo cupped his hands, but his heart was filled with fear. It seemed that Yin Wuxia was right. The dark underworld, hell, had indeed been tampered with by the 10 Extremes Yin Corp sect. What made Zhuowen's heart beat faster was that the other forces seemed to be completely unaware of the abnormalities in the dark underworld hell. Moreover, the dark underworld hell still attracted many cultivators to adventure and seek treasures. Fortunately, Yin Wuxia had already planned everything with him. As long as he obtained the elusive underworld soul flower and used the identity of a patrol to bring it out of the dark underworld hell, then with his strength, it would not be difficult for him to escape the 10 Extremes Yin Corp sect. All right, go on in. I have already bent the law by specially giving you an extra patrol. If it were not for Yin Wuxia's request, it would be impossible for you to obtain the position of a patrol in the dark underworld hell. The withered old man was obviously not very interested in Zhuo. After casually mentioning the things to take note of, he chased Zhuo out as if he was chasing away the plague. The moment Zhuo entered the dark underworld hell, the most profound feeling he had was the terrifying aura of death here. It was as if death would approach at any time. Moreover, Zhuo was surprised to find that in addition to the aura of death that could be seen everywhere, the air of the dark underworld hell also contained extremely rich heavenly energy. Chapter 28:65. Nowhere to be found. No wonder so many cultivators still enter the Umbra hell despite knowing how dangerous it is. I'm afraid it's not only because of the abundance of treasures here, but also because of the pure heavenly energy here. Zhuo sighed. He now understood why so many cultivators entered the Umbra hell. The death chi here is so dense. It's very suitable to cultivate the sacrificial death sword. Zhuo waved his sleeve and summoned the sacrificial death sword. The Thunderfire sword and Blood Immortal sword also flew out on their own. Brat, you're so mean. You only let Xiaoji out. Are you trying to trap the two of us here? As soon as the Thunderfire sword appeared, Xiaohei's shadow appeared and chattered away. Zhuo felt a headache coming on. This place is not helpful for your cultivation, but it's very suitable for the sacrificial death sword. Why did you two come out? Xiaohei grinned. Who said it's useless for us? Isn't this the Umbra hell? There must be a lot of refining materials here. There might even be divine artifacts left behind by fallen cultivators. As long as I can find a divine artifact of a very high grade, I can improve myself. Plus, I don't feel at ease leaving you alone outside. I can protect you and ensure your safety." Zhuowen was speechless at Xiaohei's boasting. However, this guy was indeed improving at a rapid pace, especially after devouring Lei Liqian's Genesis Divine Artifact and Huang Wu's Life Divine Artifact. This guy's cultivation had leaped into the second step of Dao validation, the arcane stage. Not only the Thunderfire Sword, but the Sacrificial Death Sword and Blood Immortal Sword were also improving. They had both reached the Heaven's Fate grade and were not far from the Mystery grade. Zhuowen had refined these 3 divine swords as his natal divine weapons, and they were also the 3 divine weapons that had been with him for the longest time. As long as there were benefits, Zhuowen would not miss out on them. In the end, Zhuowen gave in to Xiaohei's coaxing and pestering. In the end, he forged 3 sword hilts and tied them to his back. The Thunderfire Sword, Death Sacrifice Sword, and Blood Immortal Sword were all inverted on the hilts, forming a tripartite formation. As for Zhuowen, he simply held the Ho Yi Divine Bao in front of his chest. His hair was disheveled, and he looked like a mountain hunter. Zhuowen wasn't worried about people recognizing the Ho Yi Divine Bao. When the Divine Bao wasn't drawn, it was just an ordinary wooden Bao. Furthermore, Zhuowen could also repair the appearance of the Bao. Even if Yu Xian came back to life, he might not be able to recognize that the wooden Bao on Zhuowen's body, which looked like it would break at any moment, was the Ho Yi Divine Bao. After doing all this, Zhuowen took out a jade slip, which recorded the locations where the underworld soul flower had appeared in the past. This was what Yin Wuxia had exchanged from the withered old man for a huge price. He planned to let Zhuowen try his luck at these locations. After all, the chances of the underworld soul flower appearing in the past would be much higher. Zhuowen disappeared on the spot like a gust of wind. Zhuowen chose 3 locations. These 3 locations were Skeleton Island, Burial Desert, and Death Hills. The underworld soul flower had appeared in these 3 locations before, and they were all extremely dangerous places in the underworld hell. Many experts had fallen there, and their corpses were piled up into piles of white bones. The underworld hell was actually equivalent to a complete small world. The landscape inside was basically the same as other worlds. There were mountains, hills, deserts, and other different landforms. However, this small world contained extremely rich and powerful heavenly Tao energy. It was also full of danger, which was why the outside world called it the underworld hell. Along the way, Zhuowen met many cultivators in the underworld hell. From the clothes of these cultivators, he knew that they were all foreign cultivators. Of course, he also occasionally met the patrolling soldiers of the 10 Extremes Yin Corps sect. However, the patrolling soldiers were dressed exactly the same as the foreign cultivators, so it was difficult to distinguish them. Only between the patrolling soldiers, Zhuowen could sense each other's identity because of the token. Therefore, he could be sure that they were patrolling soldiers. Of course, when they met patrolling soldiers, they basically just glanced at each other and passed by each other. They would not greet each other. Zhuowen felt a chill in his heart. All the patrolling soldiers he had encountered were extremely powerful. These patrolling soldiers were hidden in the Umbra Hell. If they wanted to secretly attack other foreign cultivators, it would be too easy. Moreover, they would catch them off guard and would be difficult to detect. Zhuowen's first stop was Skeleton Island. As the name suggested, Skeleton Island was a strange island made of piles of white bones. In order to enter Skeleton Island, one had to cross a black sea. The Black Sea was very terrifying. There were many terrifying creatures hidden in it. Zhuowen saw with his own eyes an eternal overlord expert accidentally fall into the Black Sea, causing many terrifying creatures to attack him. In the end, he was torn into pieces and couldn't be more dead. Fortunately, he had obtained information about Skeleton Island, and knew how to cross the Black Sea to enter Skeleton Island. Therefore, he entered Skeleton Island without any danger. Of course, with Zhuowen's current strength, it was completely possible for him to cross the Black Sea by force. However, it would take a lot of trouble and waste a lot of time. Although Skeleton Island was full of danger, it still attracted many cultivators. Although many cultivators died in the Black Sea, there were still many who landed on Skeleton Island. Zhuowen had gained a lot on Skeleton Island, but compared to his wealth, it was only average. Moreover, he knew that these gains were not his for now. He needed to use the patrolling soldier's token to record their aura. After he left the Umbra Hell, these things would have to be handed over to the 10 Extremities in Corpse sect to exchange for points or other things. Naturally, he would be exploited by the sect. Towards these, Zhuowen was not particularly concerned. What he was concerned about was the birth of the elusive realm underworld soul flower divine medicine. Zhuowen didn't really care about anything unless he obtained something truly valuable in the dark underworld. After all, he was already extremely wealthy, and he even had a Genesis tier divine medicine. So he really didn't care about ordinary things. After 3 days, Zhuowen came to the place where the elusive realm flower had appeared on Skeleton Island. However, to his disappointment, he did not find any trace of the elusive realm flower. With disappointment, Zhuowen left Skeleton Island and went to the Burial Desert and Death Hills. The Burial Desert and Death Hills were not any less dangerous than Skeleton Island. In fact, they were even more dangerous. Zhuowen also encountered a lot of obstacles in these 2 traps and was covered in dust. There was even one time when he was in a life-or-death crisis. His body was blown apart by a terrifying force. Fortunately, Zhuowen withdrew in time and relied on his strong self-healing ability to finally escape death. However, the final result disappointed Zhuowen. Regardless of whether it was the Life Burial Desert or the Death Hills, the places where the underworld soul flower had appeared were now barren wastelands.